Chapter 2482. Pu, the divine demon sword drew a bright shadow, and directly sank into Dongfang Rui's head. Dongfang Rui's eyes widened. He only had to roll his eyes slightly to see the bright sword blade. Ling Han's force was very precise, and it just happened to pierce through his mind. The tip of the sword did not even penetrate through the back of his head. Thus, the sword was now swaying as if it would fall at any time. Dongfang Rui reached out to grab the divine demon sword, but the power in his body was quickly dissipating. He, a pseudo-celestial king, was inferior to even a 3-year-old child. "I know what you want to say." Ling Han walked over, his expression calm. "It's nothing more than threatening me about what your old man would do. So, I'll save you some energy. I'm not afraid of your old man. Sooner or later, I'll drag him off his throne and beat him into a dead dog. You'd better remember this. In the future, when your old man enters the netherworld, you can ask him if he died like this." Dongfang Rui wanted to speak, but when he opened his mouth, he could not make a single sound. He wanted to spread his divine sense, but his mind was nailed through, so how could he move a shred of divine sense? He could only make coughing sounds, and his life force was rapidly drained from his body. He was unwilling. A dignified emperor's star, the son of a heavenly venerate, had been sealed for several epochs in order to fight for a perfect celestial seed and have a chance of becoming a heavenly venerate in the future, but now he was mercilessly killed without even stepping into the celestial king tier. If he had known this day would come, he would definitely choose to become a 9th heaven celestial king. That would also have a chance of becoming a heavenly venerate, but the chance was far slimmer than a perfect celestial seed. However, now that things had come to this, all his hopes had come to nothing. "I will wait for you." Dongfang Rui used the last of his strength to say these 3 words. This was formed from his incomparable resentment, and he would not die until he spat it out. This was not some undying vow, but the greatest desire in his heart. He hoped that Ling Han would die quickly and go to the underworld to accompany him. Ling Han broke into a smile. "It is more realistic for you to wait for your old man. I will not see you off." He pulled out the divine demon sword. Pu, a spray of blood spurted out, and Dongfang Rui immediately collapsed to the ground, completely dead. However, his eyes were still wide open, and he died with a grievance. By the side, Ji Wuming and Ho Furong's mouths were slightly agape. Shock filled their faces as if they were unable to accept such a reality. That was the son of a celestial. Previously, Feng Qing and Heavenly Venerate 95 had been willing to stop because they had been threatened by Heavenly Venerate Soulless. If they had touched a single hair on Ling Han, Heavenly Venerate Soulless would have killed every single member of their lineage. The 2 celestial venerables had children, so they were naturally fearful. But now that Ling Han had killed Dongfang Rui, Heavenly Venerable Feng Qing had no scruples. But thinking about it again, since Dongfang Rui dared to chase after Ling Han, then what was wrong with Ling Han killing him? Oh, is Dongfang Rui not afraid of Heavenly Lord Joyless flipping out? Ling Han was all smiles. Heavenly Venerate Feng Qing naturally had Heavenly Venerate Soulless to protect him, and even Zhou Heng would help. In a battle between peers, one was responsible for their own life and death. Why would elders interfere? The other 2 second heaven celestial kings were trembling all over. They were filled with fear. Ling Han had even killed the son of a celestial venerate without hesitation, so what did it matter if he killed 2 more people? "Let's go." They exchanged a look, and while Ling Han's attention was not on them, they immediately moved, wanting to escape. "Since you've come, why not sit for a while longer?" Ling Han stretched out his hand, pressing down on the 2 of them. The flow of time flowed, infinitely affecting their speed. The 2 celestial kings ran with all their might, yet they discovered that their movements were ridiculously slow. Even the speed at which a piece of falling debris floated down was far faster than theirs. They were shocked. This was the regulations of time. Was this young man possessed by a 9th heaven celestial king? He had clearly just advanced to the celestial king tier, so how had his usage of regulations reached such a high level? Normally speaking, where would he find so much time? "Fight him to the death," the 2 celestial kings roared. Endless power of regulations surged from their bodies, instantly breaking the restraints of the flow of time. After all, when one had reached the level of celestial kings, all regulations were equal. It could be said that they were fighting with their lives on the line. One of the celestial kings did indeed bravely charge toward Ling Han, but the other celestial king took the opportunity to escape. You! The celestial king that was fighting with all his might was about to die from anger. However, Ling Han was completely unconcerned, and he smiled at the celestial king. Don't worry, I guarantee that he won't be able to escape. He raised his right hand, and the divine demon sword was tossed out. Shoo! It sliced through the air, its speed incomparably fast. Poof! The divine demon sword instantly pierced through the left shoulder of the celestial king. Under the powerful impact, the divine demon sword knocked the celestial king over and nailed him to the ground. This was still because the celestial king had dodged quickly. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been nailed to his left shoulder, but directly through his heart. At the very least, his blood essence would have been completely devoured by the divine demon sword. I told you, Ling Han said to the celestial king who was fighting with his life on the line. This celestial king shivered all over, and he felt that Ling Han wasn't a human at all. Rather, he was a complete and utter demon. How could he be so powerful? So be it that he was powerful, but the crucial point was that he was so bold. He was truly fearless when it came to killing. I am willing to pledge allegiance to Milord, and follow Milord into battle. An idea flashed across the celestial king's mind, and he half knelt on the ground toward Ling Han, declaring his allegiance. No matter who saw this scene, they would find it extremely inconceivable. A second heaven celestial king was actually declaring his allegiance to a celestial king who had just broken through? This was practically the biggest joke in the world. Ling Han stretched out his hand and patted the celestial king's shoulder. The celestial king was scared to death, and he was worried that Ling Han would suddenly attack and kill him. With every pat from Ling Han, his heart trembled. Thankfully, Ling Han didn't make a move all this time. However, he didn't relax in the slightest, and cold sweat dripped down his face in layers. Ling Han finally withdrew his hand, and said with a smile, "Fine, you will follow me from now on. What's your name?" "Milord, I am Fu Yuan." The celestial king relaxed, and he wanted to address himself as this lord again, but he discovered that this was too arrogant. Saying, it didn't seem too appropriate either. Thus, he simply used the form of address between juniors. In any case, he could be considered juniors now that he was following Ling Han. "Milord." The celestial king that had been pierced by the divine demon sword crawled up, yet he didn't dare to draw his sword at all. He jogged over to Ling Han, half knelt on the ground, and said, "I am Cheng Tao, and I am also willing to follow Milord and offer my meager strength." If the gloomy frost celestial king were here, he would definitely go crazy. In the past, the two celestial kings, Fu Yuan and Cheng Tao, had only formed an alliance with him. Although he was the alliance leader, he didn't have an absolute relationship with the other celestial kings. Now that these two great celestial kings were bowing to Ling Han, he naturally would be angered to death. Ling Han broke into a grin and said, "All right, offer up a wisp of your divine sense, and I will accept you as my underlings." Fu Yuan and Cheng Tao's expressions both changed drastically. Once they offered up their divine sense, though it didn't mean that their lives would be in the hands of others, as long as Ling Han wanted to deal with them, he would be able to use their divine sense to track them down. It would be useless no matter where they hid. Moreover, if Ling Han became ruthless and destroyed their divine sense, they would also be severely wounded. But in this situation, did they have the right to refuse? That would be death. They didn't want to die. Cell phones read more refreshing. Chapter 2484. If Ling Han's group could only be called shitstirrers when they first entered here a few hundred years ago, then they were really a group of dragons crossing the river now. In terms of power of regulation, Ling Han and the fire hibiscus could be called the strongest, with a vitality of nearly 8,000. However, in terms of physical techniques, Ling Han was definitely the #1 elite of this group. His vitality had already surpassed 8,000, reaching around 8,400. This was already close to the peak stage of the third heaven's celestial king tier. Of course, this was only in theory. How could ordinary people become celestial kings? Even king tiers could not reach this level, so they had to be emperor tiers. Thus, the vitality of a peak stage third heaven celestial king should be around 8,600, slightly stronger than Ling Han. But with the divine demon sword, Ling Han was confident that he could compete with any third heaven celestial king. However, his current shortcoming was his physique. After becoming a celestial king, cultivating the indestructible heaven scroll required an astonishing number of treasures, and although he had looted many ancestral kings, he had used up most of them, and they were from 2 different dimensions, after all. There was a difference, and it was far from enough to support his current cultivation. After he left the celestial path, and even went to a super high-level dimension, he could push the indestructible heaven scroll to new heights. Even so, his physique had now truly reached the celestial king level, and his defense was over 5,000, which was still very shocking. They had not set out yet, but big news came from ahead. After so many years of bloody battles, the last batch of buildings had finally been conquered by the various forces. It was said that these buildings were extremely extraordinary. Not only could they resist the purple light, but they also had special functions. Some could automatically refine pills, and only needed to put in materials. Some could refine tools, and still only needed to put in materials. Some could mainly attack, shooting out pillars of light that shattered everything. Now that the basic situation had been settled, the various forces were carrying out their final negotiations, reaching a ceasefire agreement, and fighting for the precious treasures in the central area together. And this also meant that the gloomy Frost Celestial King could really free up her hands to deal with Ling Han and the others. This news was obtained by Fu Yuan and Cheng Tao. They were frowning. This time they would definitely lose the chance to leave the immortal path. Even the forces on the immortal path would be targeted by immortal monarch Yu Shuang. They might be alone in the future. Although they knew that Ling Han and company were very powerful, they knew that they could only sweep through second firmament immortal monarchs at best. They would still die if they encountered a third firmament immortal monarch. However, what they were afraid of just had to happen. However, a few days later, an envoy arrived with a letter from the gloomy Frost Celestial King. His words were incredibly arrogant, and he told Ling Han and the others to go and beg for forgiveness. Otherwise, he would seal off the teleportation formation in the center of the ruins, and make them stay on the celestial path forever. This move was very vicious. Although the immortal path was a path that one had to take to become an immortal king, the resources here were limited. Ling Han and the others were all Emperor stars and even Super Emperor stars. If they were trapped here forever, it would be worse than killing them. If you understand, then give me an answer. The messenger said very arrogantly. Although he was only in the ascending origin tier, in front of the great celestial kings, his back was ramrod straight, as if he were the celestial king. In his view, since immortal King Yu Shuang had set his sights on them, a mere newly advanced celestial king naturally could only piss his pants and beg for mercy. As the messenger, he naturally had to accept the surrender of Ling Han and the others first. Ling Han smiled faintly and raised his right hand. Hong, a blazing flame sword, instantly burning the letter to ashes, but a powerful will rose from the letter, transforming into a fist that smashed towards Ling Han. This was the work of a celestial king, and supreme power was sealed in between the lines. Although it could not unleash the true strength of a third firmament celestial king, it was not impossible. It was definitely not something that an ordinary first firmament celestial king could withstand. In immortal King Yu Shuang, if Ling Han dared to destroy his letter, he would punch him. Even if he did not hit, he would make Ling Han dodge in a sorry state, and give him a show of strength. A third firmament celestial king was so high and mighty. Ling Han stretched out a finger and lightly tapped. This fist immediately shattered. How could it hurt him at all? If immortal King Yu Shuang personally attacked, then Ling Han would definitely have to face him solemnly, but it was only an attack sealed on a piece of paper. So what? Go back and tell your master that I will return a gift in a few days, Ling Han said with a smile. The messenger was already stunned. He had heard immortal King Yushuang say with his own ears that if Ling Han dared to destroy the letter, he would definitely suffer. However, the words were still by his ears, but the scene before his eyes was completely different. Heavens, how terrifying was this young man! He hurriedly nodded, and hurriedly turned to leave. Then he exerted strength in his legs, wishing he could grow wings so that he could get as far away from Ling Han as possible. He sped all the way back to the camp controlled by immortal King Yushuang, and used a special communication device to contact immortal King Yushuang in the distance. "When did that kid say he would come to greet me?" Immortal King Yushuang asked. Before he arrived, he had seized Ling Han and company's weakness. They had no choice but to lower their heads. The messenger was speechless. He really did not know what to say. "Yes, what are you hesitating for? Hurry up and say it," Immortal King Yushuang said in a deep voice. He hated his subordinates being hesitant the most. The messenger gritted his teeth and said, "That person burned Lord's letter." Immortal King Yushuang was stunned at first. He thought that these outsiders were really bold. They even dared to destroy his letter. But he immediately laughed. That person should have been injured by his attack. He should be in a sorry state. He nodded. "How badly is that person injured?" The messenger wiped his cold sweat. "That person is completely unharmed. He even said that he would return a gift in a few days." Immortal King Yushuang was stunned again. What? Completely unharmed? How was that possible? Although that attack was not his full strength, it was still an attack from a third heaven immortal king. It was extremely powerful and domineering. "Are you lying to me?" Immortal King Yushuang scolded coldly. "You did not even send the letter." Was this subordinate afraid of death? He did not even see Ling Han and company. He made up a story. "This subordinate doesn't dare. This subordinate doesn't dare." The messenger quickly knelt down. Even though they were separated by a great distance, he could feel immortal King Yushuang's anger. He was filled with fear and trepidation. He repeatedly promised that the truth was as he said. There was no falsehood at all. Only then did immortal King Yushuang start to ponder. He knew that this subordinate would not dare to lie to him, especially under his interrogation. But a mere immortal king who just broke through, how could he be so strong? The Emperor's Star of the Outsiders? He muttered. Previously, he sent 2 immortal kings to accompany Dongfang Rui to pursue Ling Han, but now that Ling Han was fine, there was no news of those 3. It was enough to prove that Ling Han and company were not simple. But no matter how strong they are, how can they be a match for a third heaven immortal king? I'll wait and see. Chapter 2485. Ling Han and the rest set off towards the center of the ruins. Every time they encountered a camp, they would first ask if it was immortal monarch Yushuang's territory, then they would attack it. If not, they would question the other party's attitude. If the attitude was good, they would just temporarily rest. If the attitude was bad, they would attack it too. Half a month later, immortal monarch Yushuang lost another 5 camps. Now, he only had 4 camps left in his hands. This made him gloomy. He handed the defense mission to the remaining 3 second heaven immortal kings. He secretly moved out to fight against Ling Han's group. He was very fast. 7 days later, he arrived at the 3rd camp. He stopped and waited for Ling Han's group. It was not that he did not want to go to the 4th camp, but that place had already fallen. At this time, immortal King Yushuang naturally knew what Ling Han meant by returning the favor, and he was extremely furious. But after so many camps were swept, not a single trace of divine sense returned to tell him what had happened. He was very puzzled. But he did not take it to heart. As long as Ling Han and the rest dared to attack here, he would let these outsiders know that the path to immortality was decided by these old guys. On the other side, Ling Han's group was very relaxed. They were building vertically now. Even though they had already surpassed the limit of 9, the vertical buildings could still bring them great benefits. If they gained some insights, they would stop and rest for a few days. They were not in a hurry. They still had a few hundred years. A few days later, they set off again. Under the suppression of the purple light, everyone felt extremely uncomfortable. Moreover, the longer they stayed, the stronger the purple light's suppression became. Thus, they hurried on their way. In less than 2 days, they arrived at a 5-story building. The building was emitting a treasured light that resisted the invasion of the purple light. Ling Han walked forward and smiled. Let me ask you, is this immortal monarch Yoshuang's territory? How dare you call Lord by his name? The guards at the door shouted. Ling Han nodded. He turned back and said, yes, this is Yoshuang's territory. Lord Qing. Lord Fu. When these guards saw Fu Yuan and Cheng Tao, their eyeballs involuntarily popped out. What was going on? These two esteemed immortal kings were actually following behind them like subordinates? And they were at the very back with no status at all. Cheng Tao and Fu Yuan had awkward expressions. Even though they were from Yushuang Immortal Monarch's faction in the past, their status was high. They were not Yushuang Immortal Monarch's subordinates. But now, it was completely different. They were too embarrassed to face anyone. Fellow Taoist Qing, fellow Taoist Fu, what is the meaning of this? An immortal king walked out, his body shrouded in a brilliant light. This was the immortal king guarding this place. His name was Sun Dong. Cheng Tao and Fu Yuan pretended not to see anything. Firstly, they really had nothing to say. Secondly, it was Ling Han who called the shots here, so they didn't dare to overstep his authority. Ling Han smiled. I want this territory. Do you want to leave on your own, or do you want me to send you off? You really are audacious. A cold voice rang out, sounding as if it had come from the depths of hell. Yushuang! Cheng Tao and Fu Yuan exclaimed at the same time. Even though they were mentally prepared to fight Yushuang Immortal Monarch sooner or later, they definitely didn't want it to be so soon. An immortal king appeared at the door, his body shrouded in three-colored immortal light. There was also endless frost energy condensing around him. He was extremely terrifying. Yushuang Immortal Monarch. Ling Han laughed loudly. I've finally become a perfected being after severing so many of your spirit wills. It really wasn't easy. Young man, do you think I won't dare to kill you just because you have a powerful background outside? Yushuang Immortal Monarch said coldly. He was at the top of the immortal path. He never had to worry about doing things. Moreover, if he obtained a great fortuitous opportunity this time, he didn't need to care about Ninth Heaven Immortal Kings or Heavenly Venerables. Ling Han shrugged. If I really bring out a Heavenly Venerable and you still dare to say that, then I'll respect you as a good man. I won't argue with you anymore. Since your true body is here, I'll give you two choices. One is to submit to me, two is to kill you. Choose one. Haha. Yushuang Immortal Monarch roared with laughter. Where did this kid get his confidence from? I'll do it. Fire Hibiscus charged forward and directly consumed a subduing purple fruit. They had naturally obtained several along the way. Each of them had at least 5 opportunities to erupt. She didn't underestimate her opponent. She directly took out her immortal artifact. An ancient mirror floated above her head, devouring laws. Fire! She shouted softly. Heaven and earth origins fire erupted. She transformed into flames that could even burn laws to ashes. It was extremely terrifying. Yushuang Immortal Monarch couldn't help but turn pale with fright. This girl was clearly only a First Heaven Immortal King, but why did the power she released make him feel apprehensive? Indeed, her combat strength was inferior to his, but with the might of an immortal artifact, she was completely a threat to him. Was she really just a First Heaven Immortal King? Yushuang Immortal Monarch had no choice but to face Fire Hibiscus's attack head-on. He raised his water-type Great Tao and transformed into a stream of black water. Every drop was heavier than a star and had terrifying destructive power. Bam! The two immortal kings clashed. In terms of combat strength, Fire Hibiscus was indeed at a disadvantage. But with the help of the immortal artifact, she could completely resist. The ancient mirror constantly floated with ancient characters. Mysterious chanting of sutras could be heard, as though it was imparting the most ancient secrets of heaven and earth. The ancient mirror shone with boundless destructive power. Even Yushuang didn't dare to let it hit him head-on. He had to use all his strength to defend or he would suffer. Immortal Monarch Netherfrost was completely unable to suppress his opponent. Fire Hibiscus broke through his defenses as the two battled in the pavilion. Boom, boom, boom. Every aftershock was enough to make a second Firmament Immortal Monarch turn green with envy. Ling Han and the others entered unhurriedly. In a few moments, they had chased everyone else out. Then they found the control core, and Ling Han imprinted a sliver of his divine sense on it. In this way, they would be able to link all their camps together. If it was someone else who completed this step, it would be equivalent to forming another force. This was quite funny. The battle had clearly not ended, but the owner of this place had already changed. Yu Shuang, Immortal Monarch, was furious and alarmed. He roared at the sky and suddenly turned around, rushing out the door. Stop fighting! Of course not. The camp was already occupied by the enemy. Fire Hibiscus was so strong, he had no confidence in suppressing her. Furthermore, the enemy had so many people. What if there were one or two more of them? He decided to retreat and fight again after finding helpers. Ling Han did not chase after him. He could escape but not the temple. Anyway, Yu Shuang, Immortal Monarch, would not give up on the final camp. He just had to find helpers there. The group rested here for a while. After getting rid of the threat of the purple light, they continued to move forward. They wanted to settle Yu Shuang, Immortal Monarch's matter in one go. 2 days later, they absorbed the strange light and fragrance. Not only did their cultivation level improve greatly, they also got rid of the negative effects of the purple light. Thus they set off. He felt that the steel lace underwear gave him 10,000 Qidian coins yesterday. He did not notice it yesterday. Chapter 2486. Ling Han and company took down 2 cities in a row and 2 of Immortal Monarch Netherfrost's camps. Now, Immortal Monarch Netherfrost was left with a lone city, but it was also the most valuable one. In the final pagoda, Immortal Monarch Netherfrost's face was cold and gloomy. Ever since he attained the Tao, he had never been in such an embarrassing situation. He was a 3rd firmament immortal king, yet he was forced into such a predicament. Fortunately, he had secretly moved out. His original intention was to prevent others from knowing that he had left, lest his camp was snatched away. Now, he had to hide his humiliation. He had personally taken action, but he was unable to suppress a few 1st firmament immortal kings. Wouldn't he be a laughingstock? However, he could not help but frown when he thought of Fire Hibiscus's combat strength. An immortal king with an immortal artifact had completely different combat strength. This was also why many immortal kings tried every means possible to obtain an immortal artifact. He did not believe that he could suppress Fire Hibiscus if he fought her again. Fortunately, the 12 factions had come to a consensus a few days ago. They formed an alliance and joined forces to deal with any enemies that attempted to snatch the final 12 pagodas. When one party was in trouble, the other parties would help. In other words, if Fire Hibiscus and company attacked, he could easily seek help. However, it was too much for him to seek help from a few 1st firmament immortal kings. No way. He shook his head, but his eyes suddenly lit up. He might as well invite the immortal kings of the various factions over. He could use the excuse of a joint discussion. Then, when Fire Hibiscus and company attacked, he believed that some immortal kings would take the initiative to fight them. When that happened, he could tie these immortal kings to his side. It was brilliant. He immediately sent a message to invite the leaders of the various factions. Everyone gave him face. Soon, 19 3rd firmament immortal kings arrived one after another. Why 19? As some 3rd firmament immortal kings had yet to reach their peak condition, they had joined forces from the beginning and fought their way here. Immortal Monarch Netherfrost was a sly old fox. He did not reveal any of his intentions. He spoke and laughed freely as he conversed with the various immortal kings. However, deep down he was hoping that Ling Han and company would arrive soon. He could not keep the 19 immortal kings here forever. After all, there were more than 23rd firmament immortal kings on the path to immortality. This was also the reason why they had to form an alliance. Otherwise, so what if there were more 2nd or 1st firmament immortal monarchs? Would they need to be afraid? He didn't have to wait too long. Ling Han and the others soon arrived. An ascending origin tier elite ran in, looking like he was in a panic, and said, "Are reporting to Master." Yu Shuang, Immortal Monarch, naturally guessed correctly, but she did not show it on her face. She scolded sternly instead, "Why are you making such a fuss?" reporting to Master, someone has charged over, saying that they want Master. The ascending origin tier opened his mouth to speak, yet did not dare to continue. Say what? Yu Shuang Immortal Monarch raised her eyebrows. The ascending origin tier mustered his courage and said, they want Master to wash his neck clean and go out to die. Oh, who is so bold to dare to want our brother Shuang's life? A third heaven celestial king said with a smile. He was very short, but astonishingly fat. His whole body was like a ball, and his earlobes were extraordinarily large, reaching his shoulders. Yu Shuang Immortal Monarch smirked and said, it should just be a few clowns. Brother Shuang, you can't say that. Since they dare to provoke us, I'm sure they have some ability. Why don't we go together? Another third heaven celestial king said. He was the complete opposite of the previous one in terms of figure. He was tall and thin, like a bamboo pole. That's right, let's go together, the celestial king said. Let's go together. I hope those people won't be scared to death. They were all laughing. On the celestial path, their group should be invincible, so they naturally had nothing to fear. They soon arrived at the foot of the pagoda, and saw that the guards in charge of defense were already swaying left and right. A group of valiant young men were standing proudly, exuding an extraordinary aura. This pagoda was so easy to break through because it was not a pagoda that specialized in defense or offense, but a refining pagoda. Ha! Nine Falls Celestial King let out a soft cry of surprise. He saw Ling Han in the crowd. This young man had done him a favor. Back then, Ling Han had only been a pseudo-celestial king. He could suppress a first heaven celestial king when he was only a pseudo-celestial king. Now that he had become a celestial king, how much stronger would his battle prowess be? Could he suppress a second heaven celestial king? Could he match a third heaven celestial king? If it was anyone else, Nine Falls Celestial King would never have thought so. Wasn't this a fool's dream? Who didn't know that there were 9 heavens for celestial kings? Every step was like reaching the heavens. A mere newly advanced celestial king wanted to match a third heaven celestial king? What a huge joke. However, this person was Ling Han, a freak who had a terrifying performance when he was a pseudo-celestial king. Moreover, if Ling Han didn't have enough confidence, why would he charge over? And it was better for him to wait and see. In any case, Ling Han owed him a favor, so he held the initiative. Yu Shuang, I'm coming to take your head. Ling Han didn't let Fire Hibiscus fight first this time. He had also sensed Ji Wuming, the Rain Emperor, and Hu Niu's restlessness, so he hurriedly stepped forward. Otherwise, it was very likely that his head would be snatched by these warmongers. A bunch of ignorant juniors. The fat celestial king stepped forward. His title was Buddha Cloud, and he wasn't at the top among third heaven celestial kings. He was only at the early stage, so he had joined forces with another celestial king of similar cultivation level to occupy a tower. However, they were just a few first heaven celestial kings. He could deal with them with a casual wave of his hand, so he naturally didn't care. Ling Han smiled at the fat celestial king and said, "This matter has nothing to do with you. I want to interfere, and you still have an opinion?" The fat celestial king laughed loudly. These outsiders were really too arrogant. Did they think that they could be arrogant just because they were a monarch tier or an emperor star? Martial art wasn't just about talent, it was also about one's cultivation realm. Ling Han shook his head. You were the one who insisted on sticking your face out to be beaten. You asked for it. Junior, how dare you? Immortal King Buddha Cloud snorted. Boom, boundless divine light surged out of his body, and a Buddhist halo appeared behind his head. It was as though he had really become a Buddha, and he was about to slay demons. Ling Han was surprised, and he looked towards Ji Wuming. This was the ancestor of the Buddhist Tao. Ji Wuming was unperturbed, and he showed no interest. Instead, it was Shi Chanzi who muttered, 3 epochs ago, a disciple of my sect entered the path of immortals, but he never came out. So he didn't die. Instead, he was trapped here, and he even became an immortal king. In other words, this immortal King Buddha Cloud was really Ji Wuming's disciple and grand disciple. Ling Han nodded. Although Ji Wuming didn't say anything, he still decided to show mercy. It could be considered as giving Ji Wuming some face. Ling Han hooked his finger. He and Ji Wuming viewed each other as competitors, so he treated this immortal King Buddha Cloud as a junior, even if his cultivation realm was higher. You really want to rebel against the heavens? Immortal King Buddha Cloud was so angry that he laughed. His body soared up, and he was like a Buddha cloud as he descended towards Ling Han. Boundless treasure light seeped out. He didn't even need to attack. Just this pressure alone was enough to crush Ling Han to death. Chapter 2488. Regulations of Time. A celestial king said solemnly. The other celestial kings were silent, their brows raised slightly. They were also very shocked. Although there was no difference in regulations after reaching celestial king tier, regulations of time and regulations of space always had a transcendent status, mainly because they were difficult to grasp. Even ninth heaven celestial kings could only glimpse a bit of these two great Daos by consuming the corresponding celestial medicine. Regulations of time were too difficult to grasp. How could a mere first heaven celestial king master regulations of time, and its power was so great that it could affect a second heaven celestial king? In the sky, the meteorite slowly descended at a speed visible to the naked eye. It was ridiculously slow, so slow that one could even move a bed and sleep comfortably, then move the bed away and leave this place. At this moment, Lu Shi's screams became somewhat ear-piercing. He was clearly a celestial king, and it was impossible for him to be in any danger for a very long time, yet he was screaming so miserably. Wasn't this a joke? Ma Dang's expression became serious. He finally knew that Ling Han's strength couldn't be measured by cultivation level, and he couldn't be careless. Otherwise, he could really be defeated by a newly advanced celestial king. He looked solemnly at Ling Han, frowned, and took a deep breath. He had to get serious. At this moment, Lu Shi finally realized, and hurriedly closed his mouth. However, it was impossible to pretend to be unconscious now, and his face instantly became the color of pig liver, extremely embarrassed. The others could still hold back their laughter, but Hunyeo was an unruly person. Instantly, she laughed loudly, and her laughter became louder and louder, unrestrained. Collapse of the earth, 8 words technique. Ma Dang gave a low humph. He had finally used his ultimate technique. Instantly, the earth rumbled loudly, as if it was about to collapse. Innumerable spikes shot out from the ground, wanting to blast Ling Han into pieces. However, the first unlucky one was Lu Shi. He couldn't dodge, and although he used his full strength to defend, how could he block the full power of a second heaven celestial king? Instantly his body was pierced, and the celestial king's blood flowed on the ground. It was an extremely tragic scene. Ling Han thought nothing of it. No matter how the earth spikes attacked, he remained motionless. With his present strength, as long as he circulated his laws to protect himself, a second firmament immortal king's attack was no trifling matter. He placed his hands behind his back and smiled at Ma Dang. Do you have any stronger techniques? Ma Dang roared. The earth crumbles, the stars fall. Hong, he once again unleashed a powerful technique, and the stars in the sky all fell together as if the world was about to be destroyed. Ling Han smiled faintly and threw a punch at the sky. As the natural laws surged, the stars all exploded and turned back into natural laws, returning to the world. Anything else? He asked again. Ma Dang's body trembled slightly. What the hell is this newly ascended immortal king exactly? His strength has already reached the 3rd heavenly layer. Although he still had some powerful techniques that he hadn't unleashed, Ling Han had dealt with them far too easily. This caused him to have a feeling that even if he unleashed these powerful techniques, it would be useless. They definitely couldn't do anything to Ling Han. Seeing that Ma Dang hadn't unleashed any more powerful techniques, Lu Shi finally breathed a sigh of relief. He was really afraid that he would be killed by Ma Dang. There were still many earth spikes stuck in his body, and his blood was still flowing. He was as miserable as he could be. A smile appeared on Ling Han's face. Then it's my turn. He suddenly drew out the divine demon sword, and used it like a flying dart. Pooh, the divine demon sword seemed to ignore space and the concept of time. It appeared in front of Ma Dang in a flash, and then directly pierced through his forehead, nailing him to death. Fuck, a second heaven celestial king has died just like that? However, Ma Dang's eyes were still wide, his expression filled with disbelief. That's right, who would believe that a second heaven celestial king would actually be killed by a newly ascended celestial king with a single strike? Yeah. The third heaven celestial kings all fixed their eyes on Ma Dang. Of course, it wasn't because of how attractive his death was, but rather because of the sword that had pierced through his forehead. Celestial tool. They couldn't help but exclaim in astonishment. Instantly, expressions of greed appeared on their faces, and they pounced toward Ma Dang at the same time, vying for the divine demon sword. The might of a celestial tool was extraordinary and peerless. This was especially so for the gloomy frost immortal king. He had suffered greatly at the hands of a celestial tool, and if it weren't for the celestial tool, he could have completely suppressed the fire hibiscus, and wouldn't have been obstructed by the other party. These celestial kings had never possessed or even seen a celestial tool before, and they only had this concept in their minds. Thus, although everyone was making a move, none of them were as enthusiastic as the gloomy frost immortal king. This was especially so for the 9 Luo celestial king, who was at the very back. Although he had only met Ling Han once before, he had a very deep understanding of him. Ling Han smiled faintly. Wang, the divine demon sword immediately came to life, a cold light radiating from it, and a murderous aura soaring into the sky. A soldier, a weapon. Xiao, the divine demon sword struggled, and Ma Dang's head exploded. It exuded a boundless ferocious light, and the sword light pointed at the celestial kings, and celestial light fell like a waterfall. After the celestial kings faltered slightly, they immediately began to fight over it again. The more powerful the divine demon sword was, the more they wanted to possess it. Shwa shwa shwa. The divine demon sword showed its might, and sword light blazed, sweeping in all directions. Even if it was surrounded by the celestial kings, so what? They couldn't block its sharpness at all. Although they surrounded the divine demon sword, they couldn't trap it in the slightest. It was like a group of ordinary people surrounding a mad bull, and they couldn't block it at all. A third heaven celestial king said, "To capture the thief, first capture the leader." A few people go and suppress that brat. Once he dies, the celestial tool will become an ownerless item, and it won't be so difficult to collect it. We swear that after we kill this brat, we will fight over the ownership of this celestial tool. These celestial kings reached a consensus, but there was also an exception, and that was 9 Luo celestial king. He retreated from the battlefield with his hands clasped behind his back, and said with a smile, "This is not part of the agreement of our alliance, so forgive me for not accompanying you." The other celestial kings were all shocked, but when they thought that there was only one celestial tool, it was naturally better to have one less competitor. Thus, they didn't mind, and continued to suppress the divine demon sword. Meanwhile, 2 celestial kings freed up their hands, and closed in on Ling Han. One of them was Buddha Cloud Celestial King. This celestial king was slightly rueful. He hadn't thought that after going around in a circle, it would still be him who had to suppress Ling Han. Then what was the point of wasting so much time previously? Stupid brat, die! The fat celestial king charged over. He extracted a great Dao, and used it as a demon-subduing pestle, and smashed it down on Ling Han's head. "Leave this to me." Ji Wuming suddenly moved, and without waiting for Ling Han's reply, he directly charged over. Wang, a flash of sword light soared into the sky. He too had drawn his celestial tool. In the past, this had only been a celestial tool, but after he advanced to Celestial King tier, he naturally refined his celestial sword into a precious tool. Now, the might of the celestial metal itself was layered with his martial art intent, and the might that erupted from it was incredibly terrifying. Buddha Cloud Celestial King paled in shock. Why was it another celestial tool? Immediately after, he was overjoyed. This brat had taken the initiative to offer his celestial tool to him. He would gladly accept it. The two of them were instantly engaged in a fierce battle. In terms of strength, Ji Wuming was actually quite a bit inferior. After all, His vitality had barely reached 8,000, but with a celestial tool, it was completely different. Chapter 2489. Fire Hibiscus was envious. With a soft cry, she charged into the battle with her immortal artifact. Her combat strength was even more terrifying. With the might of her ancient mirror, she rampaged through the crowd of immortal kings without holding back. Ling Han was fighting a third firmament immortal king barehanded. This person was Immortal King Red Snow. He was at the late-stage third firmament, and his combat strength was in no way weaker than immortal monarch Netherfrost's. Furthermore, he also cultivated in the water Great Tao. His strength was extremely terrifying. With a press of his hand, red snow fell from the sky. Any third firmament immortal king that was touched by it would definitely suffer. Against such an opponent, even Fire Hibiscus had to rely on her immortal artifact. However, Ling Han was fighting barehanded. With his body technique and power of laws unleashed, his combat strength soared to 8,500. Even though he was still inferior to Immortal King Red Snow, he could still put up a fight. This made Immortal King Red Snow gasp. Who would believe that a newly advanced Immortal King could fight him to a draw without relying on the might of an immortal artifact? It was too terrifying. If this punk cultivated for a few more years and broke through to the second firmament, wouldn't he be reduced to dregs in 2 or 3 moves? Immortal King Red Snow's killing intent surged. Since he had already offended someone with a limitless future, he might as well get rid of him. Otherwise, he would be in deep trouble when he matured in the future. Kill, kill, kill. Immortal King Red Snow unleashed his full combat strength, swearing to kill Ling Han. Ling Han was filled with confidence. He punched out furiously as his terrifying lifeblood boiled. A light punch could make ordinary immortal kings vomit blood. He laughed out loud and suddenly retreated, entering the area enveloped by the purple light. Even if you flee to the ends of the world, you won't be able to escape death today. Immortal King Red Snow sneered as he chased after Ling Han. Although the purple light suppressed their combat strength, it was the same for both sides. Furthermore, he still had the subduing purple fruit. At most, he could eat it together. Did he need to be afraid? The two continued fighting, but the strength was naturally incomparable to before. Under the suppression of the purple light, their battle prowess plummeted rapidly. It was just that Red Snow Immortal King was really being suppressed, but Ling Han was faking it. His physique technique would not be suppressed by the purple light. He was just putting on an act to trick Red Snow Immortal King. Their battle prowess continued to drop, and very soon, there was not even a tenth of them left. If they were in the outer region, it would be about the same if they fell to such a degree. If they stayed any longer, it wouldn't just be suppressing their combat strength, it would also cause terrifying damage to their bodies. However, the central region was different. Their combat strength could continue to fall. 1/15th, 1/20th, 1/50th, the battle prowess of the two great immortal kings plummeted. Immortal King Red Snow did not consume the descending purple fruit because there was a limited number of such fruits. Moreover, the legendary great opportunity had yet to appear. When the time came, a battle would be unavoidable. The more good things like the descending purple fruit, the better. In any case, his battle prowess was stronger than Ling Han's. As long as Ling Han did not use the descending purple fruit, he would not use it either. It was better to conserve as much as possible. Ling Han was waiting for an opportunity to kill an immortal king. Furthermore, he could only use it once. After that, everyone would know that his battle prowess would not be affected by the purple light. In that case, he would not be able to trick them. 180, 190, 100th. It was time. Ling Han suddenly erupted, unleashing his terrifying physique technique. He was completely unaffected by the purple light, and his battle prowess soared to the peak third firmament immortal king. He punched out, boundless aura reverberating and killing intent blazing. Red Snow Immortal King's eyes nearly popped out. He never expected Ling Han's battle prowess to erupt so suddenly. This was too illogical. Under his suppression, how could Ling Han have a chance to consume the descending purple fruit? Even if he did consume it, it would definitely be under his watch. But at this moment, Ling Han's battle prowess was boundlessly violent. Red Snow Immortal King was horrified. This punch really took his life. In his current state, how could he withstand such a powerful and domineering attack? He roared, resisting with all his might as he took out the descending purple fruit, wanting to immediately recover his full battle prowess. Pooh! It was too late. Ling Han's fist shot out and directly smashed into the Red Snow Celestial King's face, directly shattering his mind. A Celestial King, who could be called an overlord on the celestial path, died just like that. Quang, heaven and earth mourned, and a rain of blood fell. Ling Han withdrew his hand and stood, his body covered in Celestial King blood, exuding a terrifying aura like that of an ancient great demon god. In the tower, the Celestial Kings that were fighting over the divine demon sword all stopped, looking at Ling Han with incredible shock. Inconceivable, truly inconceivable. They asked themselves honestly, and there was no way they could kill Red Snow Immortal King one-on-one. But Ling Han had done it. No, it's not that this brat's battle prowess is stronger, but that he still maintained his full battle prowess under the purple light, a Celestial King said. Although they hadn't paid attention to Ling Han previously, with the strength of Third Heaven Celestial Kings, they naturally knew what was happening around them and could immediately recall it with a little thought. He ate the descending purple fruit? Impossible, Red Snow isn't that stupid. The other party ate the descending purple fruit, but he let it go. In other words, this brat has a special technique that allows him to move freely in the purple light, so he set a trap for Red Snow. Red Snow died unjustly. All the Celestial Kings sighed softly. In terms of strength, not only was Red Snow Immortal King no weaker than Ling Han, but he was even stronger, but the result was the exact opposite, and he was killed on the spot by Ling Han. However, after knowing this, they would naturally pay attention, and not give Ling Han another chance to succeed. However, this area was too large. Could it be that if Ling Han blocked the door, they would have to hide in the pagoda forever? Ling Han waved his hand, and Xiao, the divine demon sword shot out. It was incredibly sharp, and even Third Heaven Celestial Kings couldn't stop it. There was a flash of cold light, and the divine demon sword had returned to Ling Han's hand. He walked toward the pagoda, his blood boiling, and his killing intent intertwined, soaring into the sky, also incredibly terrifying. Apart from 9 Luo Celestial King, the other Celestial Kings all felt a sense of regret. How had they become enemies with such a great demon king? When they thought again, they realized that Gloomy Frost Immortal King's invitation this time was too coincidental and most likely had ulterior motives. However, they had already expressed hostility toward Ling Han and wanted to kill him and steal his treasures, so how could they reconcile with Ling Han? It was like someone trying to kill him, and then he became stronger, and the other party was also charming, so would he care? Today we must kill this brat. These Celestial Kings all reached a consensus. They had been completely tricked by Gloomy Frost Immortal King. Ling Han charged out with his sword, a cold light shining, and no one could match him. His own vitality had reached 8,400, which was the level of the peak stage of Third Heaven Celestial King. However, the Third Heaven Celestial Kings here were definitely Emperor tiers, so their vitality was naturally not 8,400, but 8,600, which was a level higher than Ling Han's. But with the addition of the Divine Demon Sword, then Ling Han became invincible and unstoppable. One man and one sword, killing the Celestial Kings into chaos. They were extremely resentful. Their strength was actually not weaker than Ling Han's, but they were almost unable to fight back because they lacked a celestial tool. Extremely resentful. Chapter 2490. Now, the Immortal Kings were in a dilemma. They couldn't retreat. Once they retreated from the pagoda, although the battlefield was bigger and more convenient for them to move around, under the suppression of the purple light, their battle prowess would plummet, and they would be in danger of being instantly killed by Ling Han. Moreover, if they fought to the death here, Ling Han, who wielded the divine demon sword, was far too terrifying, and would similarly cause them great injuries. What should I do? After fighting for a while longer, there were finally Immortal Kings who decisively left. In any case, there were people holding them back. If they didn't leave now, when would they? All of them had their own pagodas, and other than a few that were used for alchemy and forging, the rest of the pagodas had powerful offensive and defensive capabilities. Even if Ling Han were to attack them, they would not be afraid. With someone taking the lead, the others followed suit. Anyway, it was fine as long as they weren't the last person. With this thought in mind, the dozen or so immortal kings actually fled in all directions at the same time. This scene was very shocking. More than 10 third firmament immortal monarchs were attacking a newly advanced immortal monarch, but they were so frightened that they fled in a sorry state. No one would believe it if they told others. Ling Han did not hesitate. He followed Gloomy Frost Immortal Monarch closely. He could let the others go, but not Dark Frost Immortal Monarch. However, the Gloomy Frost Immortal King wasn't fleeing alone. He was tailing behind another Celestial King, and the pagoda that the other party had created was biased towards offense. As long as they entered the pagoda, Ling Han would only die if he dared to enter again. Ling Han stretched out his hand as spatial imprisonment was activated. He wanted to make Gloomy Frost Immortal Monarch stay. Wishful thinking. Gloomy Frost Immortal Monarch snorted coldly. He exerted strength and the restraints on his body were all broken. He roared loudly. He did not want to continue fighting. He was extremely decisive. Ling Han's body skill was not suppressed by the purple light, but the power of laws could not be avoided. He was inferior to you Frost Immortal Monarch in the first place. Now it was the same. It was almost impossible to make you Frost Immortal Monarch stay. Thus, he could only use the Divine Demon Sword again. Ling Han channeled his power into his sword, and he suddenly swung his hand. Shwa! The Divine Demon Sword instantly sliced through the air, and it shot toward the Dark Frost Immortal King like a shooting star. Bam! The sword pierced through you Frost Immortal Monarch's body, but it was only an ice statue. This was you Frost Immortal Monarch's trump card. As long as he was prepared, how could he be killed so easily? Ling Han rushed over and grabbed the Divine Demon Sword with a wave of his hand. His figure leaped again, and he chased after the Dark Frost Immortal King. In this place, the Divine Demon Sword's sharpness and toughness wouldn't be affected, but its might would be greatly reduced. After all, if it used regulations, it would definitely be suppressed by the purple light. This was something that couldn't be avoided no matter what. Thus, Ling Han had no intention of reviving the Divine Demon Sword. He could only rely on himself to hunt down the Dark Frost Immortal King. His body technique erupted and was not suppressed by the purple light at all. The power that burst forth was unparalleled. Bam! With every step he took, a hole would appear in the ground. He was closing the distance between him and Dark Frost Immortal Monarch. It couldn't be helped. Who asked the Dark Frost Immortal King to be suppressed by the purple light, and his strength was continuously weakening. This Celestial King was decisive, and immediately took out a purple subduing fruit and consumed it. He instantly recovered to his peak state, and the suppression of his cultivation level had no effect on him. Old geezer, don't waste my purple subduing fruit! Ling Han shouted. Gloomy Frost Immortal Monarch was stunned at first. Did he eat Ling Han's things? But he immediately realized that Ling Han had already regarded him as a dead man, so his things were naturally Ling Han's spoils of war. He was furious. This brat was too much. However, although he was furious, he had no intention of stopping to fight with Ling Han. Instead, he took advantage of the fact that the purple subduing fruit was still in effect to run faster and faster. Ling Han also consumed a purple subduing fruit, and instantly, his power of regulations completely recovered. He used time acceleration on himself, and then used spatial teleportation. He was as fast as flowing light, and chased after the Dark Frost Immortal King. The Dark Frost Immortal King was powerful, and Ling Han's regulations were almost useless against him. However, the effect was completely different against Ling Han himself. His figure flashed, and under continuous teleportation he was rapidly closing the distance between him and the Dark Frost Immortal King. The Dark Frost Immortal King turned pale with fright. He had a feeling that he definitely could not get rid of Ling Han. He had to fight, or else when the purple subduing fruit's effect disappeared, he would be in trouble. Brother Chang Song, please lend me a hand. Let's work together and kill this brat. The Dark Frost Immortal King called out. If he fought against Ling Han alone, not only would he not have any confidence in this purple light suppression, there was even a high chance that he would be killed by Ling Han. The other Celestial King ignored him and ran away quickly. What a joke! A dozen Celestial Kings could not even take down Ling Han just now, and now there were only 2 of them, and in this kind of environment. How could they have any chance of winning? Otherwise, why would they run? Ling Han had already caught up, and with a wave of his right hand, the divine demon sword appeared again and slashed at the Dark Frost Immortal King. The Dark Frost Immortal King used the same trick again, using an ice clone to block the sword for himself. However, even so, his speed was still slightly affected, and Ling Han caught up a little, causing him to feel a chill down his spine. At this moment, he was extremely regretful that he had escaped from the treasure tower. Otherwise, with his strength at the late stage of the 3rd heaven, he would be able to fight, and not be in such a passive position. However, there was no medicine for regret in this world. He did not plan to risk his life at all, and just kept running. Shwa, at this moment, a long black shadow shot over and entangled the Dark Frost Immortal King. The Dark Frost Immortal King humphed coldly, and with a thought, the water-type Great Tao appeared, turning into an ice sword, and slashed at the black shadow, easily cutting it in half. However, this was not the end. More black shadows shot over, like countless ropes, and entangled the Dark Frost Immortal King. Even though the Dark Frost Immortal King was powerful, it would still take time to cut these black shadows one by one. After being obstructed by this, Ling Han finally reached, and slashed out with his divine demon sword, releasing boundless celestial light. The Dark Frost Immortal King roared in anger. He really hated the person who had secretly attacked, but Ling Han had already charged over, and he had no choice but to block, and turned around to fight with Ling Han. As Ling Han attacked, he was surprised because although he did not see the person who had attacked, he was sure that it was Hui. This guy had also come. Hui's strength was really terrifying. He had already advanced into the Celestial King tier, and although the vines he shot out were not much of a threat to 3rd Heaven Celestial Kings, his tentacles were really too big, as if he could mobilize thousands or tens of thousands of 1st Heaven Celestial Kings at the same time. This was terrifying, and even 3rd Heaven Celestial Kings were blocked by him. However, why is he helping me? This thought flashed through Ling Han's mind in a flash. He put aside all distracting thoughts, and focused on dealing with the Dark Frost Immortal King. This time, he would not give him the chance to escape. The Dark Frost Immortal King attacked with all his strength, trying to force back Ling Han and kill his way out. However, the effects of the purple subduing fruit he had eaten had already faded, and under the suppression of the purple light, his battle prowess began to fall again. He hurriedly took out another purple subduing fruit and ate it. He had to maintain his strongest state, or he would definitely be no match for Ling Han. Under the sharpness of the divine demon sword, he would not be able to escape death. Chapter 2492. A mysterious tree absorbed the boundless energy of this place and bore a fruit in the shape of a human. Will it hatch a human? Or a ginseng fruit? The more time passed, the more sacred and mighty the aura emitted by the fruit became. Even a 3rd Firmament Immortal King would be moved. If they consumed the fruit, they might be able to immediately break through the shackles of their realm and reach the 4th firmament. Furthermore, this tree grew right beside the teleportation gate. Did this mean that as long as he consumed this fruit, the Immortal King trapped here would have the qualifications to leave through the teleportation gate? The fruits are so big. Everyone will get quite a bit. There's no need to fight to the death, right? Said an Immortal King. He was mainly afraid of Ling Han, Fire Hibiscus, and company. These newly advanced Immortal Kings were impressive. Their combat strength could match or barely match a 3rd Firmament Immortal King. Coupled with the might of their immortal artifacts, even a 3rd Firmament Immortal King would have to retreat. Thankfully, there was a mighty energy fluctuation in the final region that offset the purple light suppression. It allowed the 3rd Firmament Immortal Monarchs to regain a lot of their confidence. Otherwise, who could be Ling Han's match? Not bad, the immortal fruits are large enough. There's no need to fight until blood flows everywhere. An immortal king added. More celestial kings nodded. If it was only the size of a fist, they would definitely risk their lives for it. But now, this fruit was really ridiculously large, and the energy within it was vast and incomparably abundant. If everyone ate 1 or 2 mouthfuls, they should be able to obtain endless benefits. It would be a joke if he was stuffed to death by the immortal fruit. Ling Han stared at the strange immortal fruit. He had never seen such a strange thing before. He turned around and asked, "What's wrong with you guys?" "Strange," said Hibiscus. She looked like a little girl, but she was the #1 immortal in all of history. In terms of the power of laws, she was definitely the most powerful existence in the same realm. Even Ling Han was slightly inferior to her. She pondered for a moment and said, "What I care about is how these celestial kings know that there is a great opportunity here and that there is a way to leave the celestial path." That's right, no one had ever succeeded before, so why would there be such a saying? Who was the one who spread it out first? Why did these celestial kings believe it so much, putting down their own forces and coming here to fight? Just in the last few hundred years, this place could be said to have flowed with an ocean of blood while the heavens cried out incessantly. An immortal king would perish practically every few days, and this number was extremely shocking. It was on the verge of completely exhausting the immortal kings that had been accumulated for a few eras on the path to immortality. Of course, there were also many immortal kings who shed blood among the outsiders, the number not few. Greed was the source of a martial artist's powerful origin energy, but it was also the cause of a martial artist's death. Ling Han nodded. This was indeed an extremely strange matter. He had previously asked the 9 Luo immortal king about it, but this immortal king actually said that this was a prophecy passed down from the ancient past, that there was a heavenly decree that appeared in ancient ruins, passed down from generation to generation, making the immortal kings believe it without a doubt. There's only a little more than 100 years left. Will something bad happen? Ling Han felt that this was very likely. He was a person who had a natural halo of trouble, and no matter what strange thing he encountered, it would definitely evolve into a disaster in the end. "Gray, what method do you have?" he asked that lifeless person. They were both plants, and even though one was a tree and the other was a water plant, they could barely be considered distant relatives, right? "There's no method," Gray said indifferently. However, his scorching gaze betrayed him. He was like a pervert who had encountered a peerless beauty, or a gay man who had encountered a peerless and ferocious man. This guy wasn't honest, but he had never interacted with anyone before and didn't know how to conceal himself, so it was very easy for him to sell himself out. Ling Han deliberately said, "What if I snatch this fruit from you?" "I'll kill you," Gray said without hesitation. Fine, this was Gray's determination. He was determined to obtain this fruit. Something had clearly happened to Gray, or perhaps he had sensed it, but he definitely wouldn't share it with Ling Han. However, although Gray was very powerful, Ling Han wasn't necessarily afraid of him. His current combat strength was something that even a 3rd firmament immortal king would have to retreat from. There was really no need for him to fear anyone. However, be it him, Ji Wuming, Fire Hibiscus, or Gray, they were all wary of each other. Each of them was their strongest opponent. Time passed quietly, and more immortal kings arrived. There weren't many native immortal kings, as they had arrived long ago. The ones who arrived were basically outsiders who had become immortal kings. For example, Enran, Elena, and Xingchen Yu were all extremely powerful 1st firmament immortal kings. These people naturally chose sides. Some chose to follow Ling Han, while others chose to follow Ji Wuming. For example, Enran. She was especially attentive to Ji Wuming, and it was likely that she had already fallen in love with him. However, Ji Wuming wasn't cultivating again for the sake of romance. His only goal was to become an Empyrean. Fire Hibiscus was also a popular choice, mainly because she had gathered female immortal kings. It was said that female warriors were rare, and the higher one's realm was, the rarer they were. However, there were more than 100 female immortal kings here. It didn't seem like there were very few of them. Xian Rong finally appeared. He still hadn't become an immortal king, but he had come to an agreement with a 3rd firmament immortal king. Clearly, he was pinning his hopes of obtaining the perfect immortal seed on the other party. Now that Ling Han and Fire Hibiscus had broken through to the Immortal King realm, the number of opponents vying for the perfect immortal seed was greatly reduced. Most importantly, other than Ling Han and company, he didn't think much of the other opponents. Everyone was waiting. Some people wanted something simple, to leave immediately once the teleportation door opened. Others had bigger goals. They wanted to get a share of the great treasure that was about to appear. 1 day, 1 month, 1 year. Time passed silently at an astonishing speed. The final 100 years were coming to an end. When the time came, the teleportation door could be used, allowing everyone to return to the immortal domain. The closer it was to this moment, the more magical the tree became. It absorbed energy from all directions, and the tree trunk was like a dragon, continuously transferring energy to the giant fruit. It could be seen that the mystical little garden was withering. The crystal-like soil was losing its essence and turning into ordinary soil. Clearly, the immortal tree was extracting all the essence in the area and pouring it into the gigantic fruit to nurture a peerless immortal fruit. One could see with the naked eye that endless energy was surging. Immortal chi overflowed and was being transmitted towards the fruit. Just how magical would this fruit be? Everyone was filled with anticipation. As the 100 years approached, the changes to the fruit became more intense. Its entire body shimmered and emitted intense pulsing sounds. This fruit was in the shape of a human. Right now, where its heart was, the skin of the fruit was throbbing. Even through the layer of skin, one could feel that there was something like a heart beating inside. Every time it pulsed, the air would buzz and tremble. It was filled with a sense of rhythm and majestic power. It was as if this was not a fruit, but a powerful expert. Crack, crack, crack. Cracks appeared on the skin of the fruit as endless immortal light seeped out. It was extremely beautiful. The immortal fruit was about to appear. Chapter 2493. Everyone was filled with anticipation. The tree was extracting the last of the land's essence, and the purple light was pressing in. They believed that once the immortal fruit ripened, the land would return to normal. It would no longer be able to stop the purple light. This also meant that the final battle was about to begin. Everyone was ready to take action. The immortal fruit was extremely large, and the power it contained was definitely astonishing. If they consumed it, would it allow a third firmament immortal king to break through directly? What the third firmament immortal kings looked forward to the most was to escape the restraints of the immortal path. From then on, they could step into the immortal domain and no longer be caged birds. The immortal tree condensed the last of its essence and injected it into the immortal fruit. The leaves on the tree withered one after another. Following that, the tree trunk withered as though it had experienced hundreds of years. However, the immortal fruit became increasingly resplendent. Runes appeared on the fruit skin. They were so high that even third firmament immortal kings couldn't figure them out. In the end, they couldn't do it at all. Their eyes were filled with immortal mist and laws. Suddenly, all the immortal light converged and returned to the fruit. Then, it erupted violently, forcing everyone to raise their hands to block their eyes. However, the light disappeared as quickly as it came. The celestial fruit stood quietly. Celestial chi was still rising from the cracked skin, but it was no longer intense. Everyone could hear it clearly. At that moment, the teleportation door beside them glowed. Runes pulsed, indicating that the path to leave had opened. Seniors and lords, I have no intention of fighting for the treasure. I only wish to use this teleportation door to leave. Please lend me away, said an immortal king. He was naturally a newly advanced immortal king. He bowed to the crowd. There were too many experts here. If they misunderstood him as wanting to encroach on the immortal fruit, he could be blasted to smithereens at any moment. Me too. Lend me away, said another immortal king. Since he had already broken through, it was useless even if a perfect immortal seed was placed in front of him. Furthermore, he wasn't strong enough, so it was impossible for him to obtain any benefits. He would only be reduced to ashes. In an instant, more than 100 immortal kings voiced the same opinion. Their combined strength was almost comparable to a third firmament immortal king. Therefore, when the number of people reached a certain number, they no longer had any qualms. They strode towards the teleportation portal and did not want to get involved in this mess. The third firmament immortal kings did not stop him. Firstly, it was meaningless. Secondly, this force was indeed very powerful. Furthermore, they did not know anything about this immortal fruit. Who knew what it would suddenly erupt with? When this batch of newly advanced celestial kings was about to reach the teleportation gate, Shwa, a terrifying killing intent swept over and sliced toward those celestial kings. Damn it! These immortal kings roared in anger. They had already said that they had no intention of getting the immortal fruits. Why were there still high-level immortal kings attacking them? They retaliated. With over 100 immortal kings, their strength was something that even a third firmament immortal king would have to treat with respect. The killing intent was unstoppable. Pa-pa. Blood sprayed into the air. Immortal kings bled one after another as they fell to the ground. Everyone was alarmed. Which high-level immortal king was this? Wasn't this too unreasonable? The other party had already said that they only wanted to leave this place. Why was there still a need to stop them? Why was there a need to kill them? However, people like Ling Han, Fire Hibiscus, Ji Wuming, Nine Falls Immortal King, and the others frowned. This was because they did not make a move. Even the other second and third firmament immortal kings did not make a move. Then who did it? Their gazes were all on the immortal fruits. Just now, the immortal light emitted a terrifying killing intent that attacked those celestial kings. In the end, over 100 celestial kings died in an instant. Blood rained down from the heavens and earth. Sorrow filled the air as the heavens lamented the loss of so many celestial kings. However, the blood on the ground turned into a small stream that flowed towards the immortal fruits. The humanoid immortal fruit stabbed into the ground, its two legs sinking into the ground. Like roots, it absorbed the celestial king's blood at an astonishing speed. The blood on the ground quickly lost its vitality and turned into bloodstains. This transformation was extremely shocking. It was only an immortal fruit, but it was able to unleash a terrifying attack that could even kill celestial kings. Furthermore, it was absorbing the celestial king's blood essence like a heaven-devouring beast. It had to be known that the power contained in the celestial king's blood was extremely terrifying. Even a third firmament immortal king would not dare to drink it all in one go. Even if they did not die, they would be blasted into pieces. What do you mean by this? Are you trying to bully us? Shouted an celestial king at the third firmament immortal kings with a sullen expression. Most of them were 7th, 8th, or even 9th firmament immortal kings. Now, they had been ambushed by a third firmament immortal king. More than 10 of them had died, and they were likely to be one of the ones lying on the ground. This made them erupt with rage. Some third firmament immortal kings disdained to argue, but another celestial king explained, "We weren't the ones who did it. It was that immortal fruit." What? The newly advanced immortal kings exclaimed. How was this possible? Although immortal herbs were of an extremely high level and were extremely good at escaping, their offensive capabilities were not their forte, much less killing an celestial king. That's right. More third firmament immortal kings nodded. Although they were fearless, they had no interest in becoming scapegoats for others for no reason. They felt disdain to take the initiative to argue, but since they had already come this far, they naturally did not mind taking a stand. Seeing so many third firmament immortal kings deny having anything to do with the sneak attack, the newly advanced immortal kings began to hesitate. Could there really be an immortal herb that was so terrifying that it could even kill an celestial king? Was this still an immortal herb? It was clearly a demon fruit. Everyone's eyes stared at the gigantic fruit. They could clearly see that after the celestial king's blood was absorbed, its skin was dyed red as though it was glowing with a sanguine light. Bam, bam. Dragon-like sounds rang out in an extremely rhythmic manner, as though something was about to hatch. Everyone could not help but be wary. They carefully prepared to take action at any moment. More than 10 celestial kings had been mercilessly slaughtered. If the immortal fruit underwent another mutation, would it become even more violent and ferocious? Ling Han frowned. The more he listened to the drumming, the more it sounded like a heartbeat. However, how could a fruit born by a plant have a heartbeat? However, the shape of this fruit was clearly that of a human. It seemed acceptable to say that it really had a heartbeat. However, there was light flashing at the heart, and the skin was still undulating. If that wasn't a heartbeat, what could it be? The atmosphere was extremely stifling. It was as though a storm was approaching. Although there was no disturbance at all, a storm was about to arrive at any moment. Crack, crack, crack. The skin was still cracking, and the cracks grew larger. It seemed like a ball of light was being nurtured inside. The more the skin cracked, the more dazzling the light became. No matter how hard one tried to focus their energy on their eyes, they still saw a blazing light. However, everyone knew that the most significant change was about to happen. The Celestial King's blood was the final nourishment. After this step was completed, the immortal fruit would finally ripen. Chapter 2494. The skin of the fruit completely split open, and a blinding light shone out. No one could open their eyes. Ling Han also involuntarily closed his eyes, but his divine sense was still lively. Having reached such a high level, he had a kind of almost instinctive sense of danger. Suddenly discovering that an extremely dangerous feeling was approaching, he immediately made his move. No, he didn't. He clenched his fist, and the terrifying might of his body technique was unleashed as he punched towards that dangerous feeling. There was a heavy sound, and he felt pain in his fist. Even his bones were about to crack, and he couldn't help but take a few steps back. His blood and qi were boiling, and it was incredibly uncomfortable. Thankfully, he had the Empress, Hunyeo, and bewitching Maiden Ro behind him, so he didn't have to worry that they would be attacked. He was greatly shocked. With the support of his body technique, the power of his punch could reach the peak stage of the third heaven, but it actually made him feel as if his fist was about to crack, and his qi were about to spew out of his body. Just how strong was his opponent? Did he just punch an immortal gold? Wang, the divine demon sword appeared, and he held it in his hand. He didn't believe that even a celestial tool couldn't match it. However, screams of pain rang out in the surroundings. That mysterious attacker didn't just attack Ling Han, but attacked indiscriminately. Ling Han thought that with this attacker's strength, even a second heaven celestial king would only be insta-killed, to say nothing of a first heaven celestial king. And now, this light was incredibly dazzling, and even he couldn't open his eyes, let alone others. They could only be slaughtered. The more it was like this, the calmer he was. He said, "Wan Xing, Niu, let's form a triangle. Bewitching Maiden Ro, you're in the center." The three women all agreed. At this moment, none of them would act in a fit of pique. "Second brother." Ling Han called out again. "I'm fine." The Rain Emperor's voice traveled over. "Brother Ji." "Fire Hibiscus." Ling Han confirmed them one by one. Everyone had been attacked. For example, Yen Xianlu, and the others had been wounded with a single strike. If it were not for the fact that Ji Wuming and the Fire Hibiscus just so happened to be nearby, they would definitely not have been able to escape this calamity. Thankfully, this could still be considered a close shave, albeit barely. Everyone slowly gathered together, forming an even stronger defensive force. The screams gradually subsided, and the light from the blazing eye also faded. After a few dozen breaths, everyone's eyesight finally returned to normal. The survivors were divided into 7 camps. They were led by Third Firmament Immortal Monarchs, and they formed a defensive circle. In the center of the circle, where the immortal fruits were once nurtured, stood a completely naked person. However, due to the burning light that shone from his body, there was no need to worry about his nudity being exposed. Not only was this person completely naked, but he also had a bald head. He had no eyebrows or beard. If one were to look closely, they would find that he didn't even have a single strand of hair. There were a great many celestial kings lying on the ground. They were basically all in the first firmament, and they were basically the newly advanced celestial kings. At first, They had stepped into the ranks of the strongest in this world, and could do as they pleased, but they had been killed before they could even leave the celestial path. How pitiful! For you? Ling Han asked, raising his sword. He was sure that the murder just now had been committed by that hairless person. His strength was really quite terrifying. It had only been a few dozen breaths, and he had already killed over 1,000 celestial kings. The heavens and earth mourned, and it was as if doomsday had arrived. The hairless person's initially closed eyes suddenly opened. Shwa, 2 bolts of lightning flashed past, and it was as if a heavenly tribulation was unleashing its might. Ling Han only felt his vision blur, and then a sense of danger assaulted him, causing him to instinctively strike out with his sword. The divine demon's sword trembled, and Ling Han couldn't help but feel shocked. He saw that the hairless person had already charged in front of him. At first, he had wanted to pierce through the top of his skull with his claw, yet it was blocked by the divine demon sword. But what shocked him was that the divine demon sword had clearly struck the hairless person's arm, yet it couldn't break through his defense at all. Celestial tools couldn't hurt him either. Ling Han knew that though celestial tools were sharp, they weren't invincible. As long as one reached the height of 8th heaven or 9th heaven, then they would be able to wrap regulations around their physical body, and they would be completely capable of fighting against celestial tools. But the crux was that this hairless person was definitely not an existence of 8th heaven or 9th heaven. His power was enough to rival Ling Han's, and was even a little stronger, but there was still a long way to go before he reached 4th heaven, what more 8th heaven. Then there was only one possibility. This guy's arm was forged from divine metal, and that was why it was so tough. But if it was divine metal as an arm, how could it possibly move so nimbly and freely? Strange. Ling Han shook his body forcefully, and the hairless person was instantly sent flying back by him. This scene was captured by all the celestial kings, and they were all incredibly shocked. Not afraid of celestial tools? Fuck, are you sure you're a living being, and not a humanoid weapon? Gray's eyes lit up, and deathly aura rose up from the top of his head, intertwining into a ball. He stared closely at the hairless person, his eyes burning with incomparable fervor. The hairless person steadied himself. He looked at Ling Han, and the light in his eyes receded. Surprisingly, he didn't have any eyeballs, and his eyes were completely white. However, it wasn't the kind of white that a dead fish's eyes would have. Instead, it was countless flashes of lightning, and that scene was enough to send chills down one's spine. You were able to block one of my attacks. Not bad, the hairless person said. His voice was so sonorous that it seemed to be squeezed out from metal and stone. Ling Han smiled and said, I've always said this to others. I didn't expect to hear it from someone else today. Should I say thank you? The hairless person shook his head. No need. You'll be killed by me very soon. There's no need to go through so much trouble. Baldy, are you that fruit from before? Fire Hibiscus shouted loudly, and her eyes were filled with fury. She had almost been killed by a single attack. This was something that she had never encountered before, and it was also a great humiliation to her. The hairless person walked toward her, and a sinister look appeared in his eyes. Sealing vitality and deceiving the heavens. You deserve to die. What does this have to do with you? Ling Han asked. He felt that it was strange. It was not only this hairless person who had appeared out of nowhere, but also the entire matter from beginning to end. A very, very long time ago, for example in Ji Wuming's last life, he didn't need to walk the celestial path to become a celestial king. In fact, he didn't need to go to a specific place to break through to the severing mundane tier, dividing soul tier, immortal palace tier, and so on. There was no need to be so complicated. But from some unknown point on, the path of cultivation had been forcibly tied with a loop, and he had to follow a certain order and follow some kind of arrangement. But on the celestial path, everything still maintained the way it had been in ancient times. Advancing to the severing mundane tier, and advancing to the dividing soul tier, they could all break through as soon as their cultivation level reached a certain level. Moreover, he had also discovered the former residence of the mother of the heavenly venerate-born fate god here. Moreover, every time he had occupied a building here, the black tower would tremble as if it was emitting some kind of resonance, and also as if it had discovered some treasure here, causing it to react. Moreover, there was a technique that could allow celestial kings to leave here, and there was also a flawless celestial seed here. Just who was it that had spread this news? If you don't mind, tell us about it. Ling Han said smilingly, and stared closely at the hairless person. The hairless person paused for a moment and said, "Originally, I didn't have to answer this question of yours, but I want to blend into this heaven and earth, so I can try to be a little more humane, so I'll answer you." "What do you want to know?" He countered with a question. "First, please put on some clothes," Ling Han said. Reading on a cell phone was more refreshing. Chapter 2496. The Black Tower had already sunk into silence. Previously, in order to save Ling Han, his disciple from another lifetime, the heavenly venerable birthright had burned his remnant soul and forcibly affected the operation of the heavenly Tao so that heavenly venerable Joyless could recover his power and suppress the two heavenly venerables, Jiao Wu and Feng Qing. And because of this, the Black Tower had exhausted its power. According to the heavenly venerable birthright, only after Ling Han became a heavenly venerable could the Black Tower recover and restore its glory. But now, the Black Tower was about to revive. How is this possible? I was born from heaven and earth, and that unfilial son, birthright, returned to heaven and earth, which naturally allowed me to grasp his technique. Tian Xing casually revealed a great secret, shocking everyone until their scalps went numb. As expected, this guy was born from the will of heaven and earth. The heavenly venerable birthright had merged with the path and sealed the passage between the two realms, his will forever trapped between heaven and earth, and this guy was born from heaven and earth, even inheriting the will of heaven and earth. Thus, he also obtained the technique of the heavenly venerable birthright, and grasped it even more than Ling Han, his disciple from another lifetime. Because from a certain perspective, Tian Sheng was actually the heavenly venerable birthright. Why would the Black Tower react every time he collected the buildings here? Perhaps this was the dojo of the heavenly venerable birthright, or perhaps the Black Tower had sensed Tian Sheng's existence. Ling Han's chest split open, and the Black Tower flew out automatically. Though it had exhausted its power, it was still a heavenly venerable treasure after all, and its quality was obvious, and it was completely unstoppable. Ling Han vomited blood. He was equivalent to being hit by a heavenly venerable treasure. If he hadn't been with the Black Tower for countless years, and if the Black Tower hadn't lost all its power, he wouldn't have just vomited blood. It was possible that he would have died. Tian Xing withdrew his hand, and the Black Tower fell into his hand, without any incongruity. He broke into a smile. "There's no need to care about any rules. I can kill as I want, and do whatever I want. It feels so good." He was brimming with killing intent, exuding extreme evilness. Ling Han had already channeled the indestructible Heaven Scroll, and was beginning to recover from his injuries. However, how could the injuries inflicted by a heavenly venerable tier treasure tool be so easily healed? Even if he rose from the ashes, it was possible that these kinds of injuries would still accompany him. As for the loss of the Black Tower, he was not very concerned about it. That was because it belonged to the heavenly venerable of origin birth in the first place, and was not a precious tool that he had refined, so it did not suit his Tao. However, the relic of the original born heavenly lord could not fall into the hands of an unknown person just like that. You can't be the world itself, right? Ling Han suddenly thought of a possibility. According to Tian Xing, the heavenly lord of life birth was an unfilial son. He clearly could not be the father or mother of the heavenly lord of original birth, yet he said such words. There was only one possibility: he was the heaven and earth. Everything in the immortal realm was born from heaven and earth. All life was the breath of heaven and earth. Tian Xing was taken aback for a moment before he burst into laughter. Although your guess isn't completely correct, it's still a little off the mark. Then why don't you fulfill my curiosity? Ling Han asked with a smile. I'm not interested. Tian Xing snorted and attacked again. His right hand turned into a golden saber and slashed wildly, while his left hand grabbed the black tower and turned it into a 10-meter-long stick. He used it as a staff and swept it towards Ling Han and the others. Although the black tower was no longer displaying its might, in terms of quality, it was still supreme. Thus, even if it was used as a staff, combined with Tiansheng's power, it could still display a terrifying might, forcing Ling Han and the others to not dare to face it head-on. Ling Han also felt slightly rueful. The black tower had saved and helped him countless times, yet now it had become a weapon in someone else's hands and wanted to suppress him. This was truly ironic. Tianxing went on a killing spree. On one hand, he fought against Ling Han and the others, and on the other hand, he could actually free his hands to attack those first and second heaven celestial kings. The black tower waved. It was made of heavenly venerable level material, so it did not need to display its might at all. Just a single hit from it would be fatal. Who could block it? Celestial kings blocked it one after another. In front of Tianxing, these couldn't be considered celestial kings at all. They were merely leeks that were harvested in batches. And after devouring the blood essence of these celestial kings, Tianxing was becoming increasingly powerful. This was like a rolling snowball. The more he couldn't block it, the more powerful he became. In just half a day, there were only about 100 celestial kings left. It should be known that there had originally been over 10,000 celestial kings. Tianxing's battle prowess had soared to the fourth heaven. This was incredibly terrifying. Which celestial king could increase his strength so much in just half a day? As strong as Ling Han and the fire hibiscus were left with the power to defend themselves. It was impossible for them to stop Tianxing. Go, let's leave the path of immortals first. They decided to break through this place and leave through the teleportation gate. In the outside world, there were many high-level celestial kings. Could it be that 8th and 9th heaven celestial kings could not deal with Tianxing? Even if he was the incarnation of the heaven and earth, wasn't there still Zhouhen? He was a 6th-step heavenly venerable level celestial king, stronger than the celestial realm itself. Did I say you could leave? Tianxing asked menacingly. He leaped back, his saber and tower unfurling, blocking Ling Han and the others. He clearly didn't use the regulations of time or space, but the speed of his leap was frighteningly fast. Intrinsic power. Ling Han raised an eyebrow. He had also extracted intrinsic power from the origin world. Apart from the heavenly venerable level, he was the most qualified to speak. Intrinsic power belonged to the heaven and earth, and the heavenly venerable level had stolen this kind of power, transcending the regulations, and was not allowed to belong to the heaven and earth. But now, he was only a celestial king, yet he could use intrinsic power. Perhaps he couldn't use it, but was like Ling Han, only tempered by this kind of power. Yet, he was still astonishingly powerful, and it was also unimaginable. What did this mean? He really was a favored child of the heaven and earth, or even an incarnation. Only he could have such good fortune. You are also an unfilial son. Tianxing's gaze turned over, and he attacked aggressively, wanting to kill Ling Han. You have to return to my body, he said. Damned freak, piss off. Ling Han brandished the divine demon sword, but the divine demon sword wasn't at the level of a heavenly venerable level after all. It was shaken by the black tower until the blade of the sword trembled continuously as if it were about to shatter. This was a qualitative suppression. The Empress and the others hurriedly moved to help. Putting aside the fact that the Empress and Hunyo were the closest people to Ling Han, even Fire Hibiscus wouldn't stand by and watch him die. That was because they were now in the same boat, and they had to help each other. Xiao, a black shadow darted over. It was a vine. We had moved. And the target of his attack wasn't Ling Han and the others, but rather Tianxing. You seek death. Tianxing was enraged, and with a slash of his golden saber, the vine was easily cut in half. Hui Mu was expressionless. I hate you. His mindset was very simple. If he hated someone, then he would fight. Tianxing threw his head back and laughed loudly. Fine, I wanted to completely destroy you at the time, but unfortunately, you escaped. This time I will devour you and completely repair my soul. He had no intention of letting Hui go at all. He only wanted to temporarily stabilize Hui so that he could make his move later. He hadn't thought that Hui wouldn't give him the chance, and finally interfered. Once Hui moved, there was instantly a mighty momentum, and millions of vines shot out at the same time. Although each vine couldn't compare to the battle prowess of Ling Han and the others, when there were enough of them, they could similarly cause a qualitative change, forcing Tiansheng to divert some of his power to deal with them. Otherwise, with his hands and feet tied up, it was possible that Ling Han and the others could take the opportunity to kill their way over and leave through the teleportation gate. The 6 great elites joined forces to attack Tiansheng, and among them was a freak like Hui. However, Tiansheng was the biggest freak. As his golden saber danced, one vine after another was cut in half like vegetables, and the others still couldn't break through his line of defense. Today was really a bad day on the highway, and there was so much traffic that they couldn't even return home. They found a hotel to stay in, and would first upload the video. Sorry, everyone. Chapter 2497. His innate strength had transcended common sense. Perhaps his existence had transcended common sense, and he was the will of the heavenly Tao. From the moment he was born, he was different. The appearance of the path of immortals and the death of large numbers of celestial kings were all because of his birth. What elite would be born with the death of tens of thousands of celestial kings? Unique. Innate was extremely powerful. Every part of his body could be transformed into a celestial weapon, and his destructive power was astonishing. Moreover, divine metal was extremely tough. Even if celestial weapons were used to attack him, it would be very difficult to cause a situation where both sides would be injured. If one used brute force, perhaps only a clash between ninth heaven celestial kings would be able to destroy divine metal. Ling Han and the others were completely suppressed. Even Gray couldn't unleash the advantage he should have in front of Innate. Although he had many tentacles, they would break as soon as they wrapped around Innate's body. This was because layers of curled blades appeared on Innate's skin. They were too sharp, and the vines would break as soon as they touched them. They couldn't stop Innate at all. Even with the 6 elites working together, they still couldn't break through. Innate was like a divine mountain that couldn't be crossed, causing them to despair. Ling Han and the others all frowned. How could an existence like Innate be able to descend into this world? With divine metal as his body, it meant that he was almost invincible. Even those who were stronger than him could only suppress him, but couldn't injure him. It was unknown whether throwing him into a furnace and tempering him for countless years would be able to melt him. But even the supreme regulations of fire could only melt divine metal, and couldn't burn divine metal. Could this really kill him? This was a product of the will of the heaven and earth. If it could be easily killed, then the heaven and earth would be too useless. Take Wally for example. He was the crystallization of a plane that had existed for who knew how many epochs. Although his battle prowess wasn't strong, his analysis ability was unparalleled. Moreover, even the large black dog couldn't kill him. More importantly, the purple light began to spread again. Apart from Ling Han, everyone else's battle prowess was greatly affected, but Innate was still fearless. It was very likely that he was the same as Ling Han. His body technique was extraordinary, and he had been tempered by the intrinsic power of the origin world, surpassing the level of regulations. Everyone ate the purple subduing fruit and recovered their battle prowess. But the problem is, they don't have the upper hand, so what's the point of struggling like this? Fruit after fruit, everyone continuously swallowed the subduing violet fruit to maintain their battle prowess at their peak. Even so, they were still no match for nature, and their bodies were constantly injured. This was slashed out by an immortal weapon. No matter where it was, it would be a heavy injury. The remaining celestial kings were all helping, but they couldn't advance nor retreat. Apart from risking their lives against Tian, there was no other way. However, it was useless. He was born too powerful. His combat strength was infinitely close to that of a 4th firmament immortal king. No one could stop him when he went on a rampage. Ling Han's face was pale. The wound on his chest that had been caused by the collision with the Black Tower had yet to recover, and now there were a few new wounds on his body, causing him to be in extreme pain. Most importantly, even though they had also used their immortal artifacts to slash at their bodies, they were still immortal artifacts. So what if they were slashed? It wouldn't hurt at all. If this goes on, they're all going to die. Do I have to use the realm scroll? Ling Han suspected that he was born to be nurtured by the heavens and earth. Perhaps he was not even afraid of the heavenly tribulation. Didn't you see that there was no heavenly tribulation when he was born? He was definitely created by the heavens and earth through a backdoor, so how could the heavens and earth use the heavenly tribulation to strike him? What do I do? What do I do? Ling Han even wanted to pass through the teleportation gate at all costs and ask Zhou Heng for help. Others might not be able to enter the celestial path, but Zhou Heng would definitely have a way. At worst, he could forcefully pull the celestial path out of the void. A sixth-step heavenly venerable was stronger than the heavens and earth, so it definitely wouldn't be difficult for him to do so. However, finding Zhou Heng definitely wasn't something that could be done in a short period of time. Perhaps by the time Zhou Heng arrived, everyone here would already be dead, and Tianxing would have already fled far away. He was born to the heavens and earth, so he could definitely perfectly fuse with the heavens and earth. Even a heavenly venerable wouldn't be able to find him unless Zhou Heng destroyed the entire celestial realm. If he sucked everyone into his spatial god tool, with Tianxing by his side, could he do it? He wasn't a dead person, and his strength was infinitely terrifying. Without anyone to hold him back, Ling Han still wanted to break through. It was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. The fire hibiscus was known as the strongest celestial of all times, yet she was also frowning at this moment. She couldn't come up with any ideas. Ji Wuming was the reincarnation of the strongest ninth heaven celestial king, yet he was also at his wit's end. Tianxing's appearance was an existence that broke the rules. He wasn't someone that Ling Han and the others who had cultivated step by step could compare to. Bam! Hot blood spurted out as Fu Zhou's neck was sliced off. Hot blood immediately gushed out, but the essence was completely absorbed by Golden Saber, transforming into Tianxing's powerful strength. Ling Han couldn't help but roar angrily. Although he hadn't spent much time with Fu Zhou, he was still his little brother. Watching Fu Zhou die in front of him made him feel terrible. Haha. Tianxing laughed maniacally and moved again. He didn't care about how others felt as he continued his massacre. Even third heaven celestial kings began to bleed. First and second heaven celestial kings were like wheat being reaped. As long as they were targeted by Tianxing, they would definitely die. Before long, Hao Xinjue was also killed. Blood splattered on Ling Han's body, causing his expression to turn colder and colder. He had to kill Tianxing. This feels so good. Tianxing roared with laughter. There's no need to care about those damned rules. It feels so good to be unbridled, you unfilial sons. You aren't the only ones who can defy the heavens. I am the heavens. I am your ruler. Tianxing was like a demon king. He was bathed in the blood of celestial kings, and his entire body was enveloped in a layer of bloody mist. He looked incredibly terrifying. Do you think this is my full power? He laughed loudly and struck out with his palm. Boom! A wave of flames surged out, instantly turning the ground into lava. Even third heaven celestial kings could only stomp their feet in fear. This was the great Tao of fire. Everyone's expressions changed. Tianxing wasn't only forged from divine metal, but his comprehension of regulations had also reached an astonishing height. The might of the great Tao of fire that he struck out was boundless. It was as if he had surpassed the third heaven and was on par with the fourth heaven. This world was mine in the first place. All of you, return my power to me. Tianxing shouted as if he had gone mad. Did he really think he was the heavens and earth? Ling Han humphed coldly. Our power is the result of our bitter cultivation. Even if you are the villainous heavens, you don't have the right to take it away. Is that so? Tianxing smirked coldly. A strong killing intent rose up the corners of his lips. Then I'll take it for you. He charged over with boundless flames. This terrifying wave of flames, coupled with the sharpness of his golden saber, the level of the Black Tower, and his power that far surpassed everyone else. Was there anyone who could face him head-on? All of you can die. He roared with laughter. Xiao, his figure lunged forward, but halfway through he actually froze. Damn it. He couldn't help but roar. You've already transformed into Dao and returned to my body. Why are you still resisting? These words came out of nowhere. No one knew what had happened, but Tianxing was definitely in a strange state. Everyone understood this. Let's seize this opportunity. Ling Han hurriedly shouted. Tianxing had already gained the absolute upper hand, so there was no need for him to use this kind of method to deceive everyone. Go! Chapter 2498. Don't even think about it. Tianxing suddenly attacked again. Waves of flames surged, and his golden blade slashed down. He blocked everyone, but his face revealed a malevolent expression as he roared, "Scram! Scram!" After shouting, the malevolence on his face became even more apparent. He couldn't help but hug his head with both hands and wail loudly. Hurry! Ling Han immediately shouted at the Empress and the others. You! The three girls stared at him. I'll definitely come out alive. Ling Han nodded solemnly. The three women did not say anything else and rushed towards the portal. They were not the first. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the surviving Celestial Kings jumped towards the portal with all their might, while the Celestial Kings on the Immortal Path ran back. They could not leave the Immortal Path, so naturally, they could only retreat. Hold it right there. Tianxing's eyes spewed flames as he swung his saber at the teleportation gate. A terrifying saber beam streaked past, capable of splitting even a third firmament immortal king into two. Ling Han had long since been prepared, and he brandished his divine demon sword to parry this attack. He was immediately knocked back by the saber chi, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Now, Tianxing's battle prowess had soared to the fourth sky, and he was incomparably powerful. More and more people threw themselves into the portal, and now there was nothing nature could do to stop it. Damn it, damn it. Since you're already dead, why are you messing with me? Tianxing roared, his right hand constantly changing shapes. One moment it was a saber, the next moment it was a sword, and the next moment it was a staff. Ling Han originally wanted to leave, but he couldn't help but be startled. This Tianxing suddenly seemed to be suffering from epilepsy. Was it because the Heavenly Lord of original birth origin was affecting him? True enough, the Heavenly Venerable Fate-born had fused with the Heavenly Tao, causing him to have a natural grasp of the Heavenly Venerable Fate-born's Tao. Even the Black Tower was closer to him, but conversely, a part of the Heavenly Venerable Fate-born's will was definitely in his body. However, in comparison, it was definitely his own will that occupied the dominant position, and the Heavenly Venerable Fate-born's will could only influence him for a moment. Although the effect was limited, it could play a decisive role in such a crucial moment. In the end, Master was still the best, helping him resolve another crisis. Suppress! Tianxing roared angrily towards the heavens. Not only was his entire body surging with flames, but his eyes were also surging with lightning. His expression quickly regained its calm, as the will of the original born Heavenly Lord was about to be suppressed by him. Ling Han no longer hesitated and immediately leapt towards the portal. Shua, a saber chi slashed over, incomparably piercingly cold. Without even turning his head, Ling Han slashed out with his sword. Ping, he blocked the saber chi, but his whole body shuddered, and his figure slanted as he passed through the portal. The scenery in front of him changed instantly. This was a dark spatial tunnel. Behind him, the teleportation gate instantly turned into a small white, but very quickly he saw Tianxing charging over. He chased after Ling Han in the tunnel, as if he was determined to kill Ling Han. Damn! Ling Han hurriedly broke into a run. In this spatial tunnel, he didn't dare to use spatial teleportation or time acceleration. Otherwise, it was very likely that the space would be disturbed, and the tunnel would definitely collapse. You won't be able to escape. His natural speed was shockingly fast. He did not even use his rules, but instead used his physical techniques to close the distance between him and Ling Han. With his speed, he would probably be able to catch up within a few breaths, and in front of Ling Han, the Empress and the others were actually not far away. Ling Han steeled his heart, and suddenly stood still. He slashed out with the divine demon sword, and boom, the regulations in his body all surged out. Since that was the case, he would destroy this tunnel. You dare! Tian Sheng charged over, and immediately slashed at Ling Han with his saber. Ling Han retreated, launching attacks as he retreated. His target was not Tian Sheng, but rather this tunnel. He now had the battle prowess of the peak stage of the third heaven, and his destructive power was terrifying. Soon, the whole tunnel was shaking, and streaks of strange light shot down. It was as if this tunnel had already shattered. Stop! Tian Sheng roared. Although he was born from heaven and earth, and had all kinds of special abilities, if the spatial tunnel really shattered, he could only go with the flow. Of course, he definitely wouldn't die. With his physique that was forged from divine metal, it was terrifying that in this world, aside from heavenly venerables, even ninth heaven celestial kings could only suppress him. How could Ling Han care? Instead, he brandished the divine demon sword even more urgently. Pung, 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 the whole tunnel emitted dazzling light. Suddenly, there was a large explosion, and Ling Han was unsurprisingly sent flying. Even with his physique and full defense, it was useless. He only felt that all the bones in his body had been turned into powder, and there were also fragments of great Tao embedded in his body, making him indescribably uncomfortable. Fortunately, Tian Sheng was also sent flying, and in another direction. Under such a large explosion, even Tian Sheng was powerless to resist, and could only be sent flying. The explosion continued, spreading towards both sides. At this time, Ling Han could only pray that the Empress and the others could escape from the tunnel in time. Otherwise, if they were affected by the explosion, they would at least end up with serious injuries. Then his vision darkened, and he fainted. His injuries were too severe. There were cracks from the heavenly venerate treasure tool, lacerations from the slash of the celestial weapon, and shock injuries from the large explosion of the spatial tunnel. Even a person made of iron couldn't bear it. After an unknown amount of time, he slowly woke up, only to see that his whole body was filled with indescribable pain, and his eyelids couldn't open at all. He tried to use his divine sense, but it was extremely difficult. Only a sliver of it could circulate. He looked inside his body, and couldn't help but grimace internally. Alright, this body could really be said to be riddled with holes. Previously, he had already suffered serious injuries, and finally, he had been shocked by the large explosion of the spatial tunnel, and that was even more fatal. Now, there were countless fragments of the great Tao of space piercing into his body, and it was like a mortal's body was full of sharp knives. How different was this from being dead? Thankfully, Ling Han was not a mortal after all. Even if I want to move, I will need at least 100 years. Ling Han estimated, and even if 100 years passed, he would at most be able to have a little bit of battle prowess, and the distance from complete recovery was still far, far away. Furthermore, he sighed, the spatial god tool had also turned into fragments in the large explosion, and the things inside were naturally all gone. Now, I can only rely on my body to slowly recover. Ling Han wanted to know where he was right now, but his eyelids couldn't open, and his divine sense couldn't be released outside his body either. He was completely blind. He sighed inwardly again. He was a mighty celestial king, and even had the battle prowess of the third heaven, but now, he was not even comparable to an ordinary person. He could only lie down like this. In any case, his physique had also reached the level of a celestial king, and the wind and rain naturally couldn't affect him much. 1 day, 10 days, half a month, time passed quietly. Ling Han tried with difficulty to pull out the thorns of the great Tao in his body, but the speed was ridiculously slow. There was no helping it, he was really too injured now, and he had to take it slow. There were wild beasts here, and now, Ling Han's aura was extremely weak, and he didn't have a trace of the deterrence of a celestial king at all, so he couldn't be scared at all. From time to time, he would be bitten a few times. Fortunately, his physique was strong enough, and even though his whole body was covered in wounds, no wild beast could bite him. The beasts that bit him all had a mouthful of broken teeth shattered. After more than half a year, he was finally discovered. Chapter 2500. Ling Han released his divine sense. He was really weak now, and just scanning Zhao Xian's body took a lot of effort. However, there was no way he wouldn't repay someone's kindness. He was a celestial king. Even if he was injured, he was still a celestial king. With just a glance, he knew that Zhao Xian's talent in martial art was really bad. He definitely wasn't a top genius and had been buried. How mediocre. Ling Han frowned in his mind. If he were still in his prime, it would naturally be a piece of cake for him to change Zhao Xian's aptitude. Even if he couldn't help him become an emperor's star or a monarch tier, it wouldn't be difficult for him to become an ordinary prodigy. But now, he could only use his divine sense to speak. What should he do? After thinking about it, Ling Han made a decision. That was to design a set of cultivation techniques tailored for Zhao Xian to maximize his strength. Undying Grandpa? Zhao Xian saw that Ling Han didn't speak for a long time and couldn't help but ask. Ling Han sent out his divine sense to tell Zhao Xian to retreat. Then, he said, "I will teach you a cultivation technique. Memorize it." He said word by word, guiding Zhao Xian on how to use the power in his body to strengthen his bones and muscles. Zhao Xian hurriedly noted this down. He didn't know who Ling Han was, but that was fine. Just based on the fact that Ling Han was still alive despite being on the brink of death for several decades, and that his appearance hadn't aged in the slightest, it was clear that Ling Han definitely had something mystical about him. After passing on the cultivation technique, Ling Han said, "Go." He thought about it and said, "Don't let others know that I taught you." He still had to recover. If the Zhao family found out, even if they just thanked him, it would affect him. The reason why he would help Zhao Xian was because Ling Han knew that if Zhao Xian still did not have any prospects, then the Zhao clan could really end in this generation. Ling Han wasn't someone who liked to owe favors. If the Zhao family was wiped out, then who would he repay this favor to? Zhao Xian agreed and left. Only 10 days later, he ran over excitedly and said, "Grandpa Undying, the technique you taught me is really useful. I've already reached the peak of the first layer of body refining tier, and I'm about to break through to the second layer." This was natural. No matter how mediocre he was, Ling Han was an immortal king, and had even been the ruler of heaven and earth. He created a cultivation technique specifically for him, so how could this not be awesome? However, Ling Han sighed in his heart. This brat's talent was indeed extremely poor. Otherwise, he would already be at the second layer of body refining tier, or even attempting to break through to the third layer. Forget it, he had plenty of time anyway, and Zhao Xian had plenty of time too. Cultivate well. That was all Ling Han said. With Ling Han's help, Zhao Xian's cultivation level naturally soared to the skies. Very soon he shone brilliantly, and became the new rising star of the martial arts hall. He also became the most classic example of a piece of trash making a comeback. Who knew how many beautiful women looked up to him, causing the young girl who had previously made fun of him to be filled with regret. Zhao Xian's strength soon surpassed Zhao Yulio's, which also made Zhao Yulio feel great. And the miracle of this young man continued. In half a year, he broke through to the Poly tier, and after another year, he advanced into the Gushing Spring tier. His speed was astonishingly fast. And the information he received from Zhao Xian made Ling Han more and more puzzled. Where exactly was this? Ling Han brought up all the places in the eastern and western celestial realms, but could not match any of the places that Zhao Xian had mentioned. Then a guess rose in his mind. He couldn't have entered a small world, right? This was very reasonable because in the celestial realm, those who were born would possess the cultivation level of the Shattering Void tier or even higher, and the majority could cultivate to the Genesis tier. This was also the reason why the three great heavenly venerables forbade the people of the ancient realm from entering the celestial realm. Because the more living beings there were, the stronger a plane would be. As for the ancient realm, it was also on a higher level than a small world. Though it was not as freakish as the celestial realm, the majority would reach the spiritual ocean tier upon birth. Thus, from this perspective, the possibility that this was a small world was very high. Furthermore, the spiritual chi here was very sparse, which also corresponded with the characteristics of a small world. The spatial tunnel shattered, and he actually arrived in a small world. No wonder the Black Tower and the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire would appear in the lower realm. After passing through the void, they would really wander around the whole plane. Ling Han set aside this question. Whether it was a small world or an ancient realm, as long as his injuries recovered, it would only be a matter of time before he returned to the celestial realm. He continued to recuperate, and almost 70 years passed. It was as if something inside his body had exploded. This was a fragment of Great Tao. Even if it was only a fragment removed, Ling Han's entire body relaxed. He had finally recovered a tiny bit of power, really just a tiny bit. This progress was faster than he had expected. He managed to crawl to his feet, feeling that his body was on the verge of collapse. Undying Grandpa. Zhao Exen just happened to come over, and when he saw that Ling Han had actually stood up, he was so shocked that his eyeballs were about to pop out. He was now already a man in his 30s, but he was focused on cultivation and had not married yet. However, his intelligence was no longer the same as it had been when he was young. How could he not know that Ling Han was an unparalleled genius? It was just that this genius had been severely wounded, and perhaps he would not be able to recover in this lifetime. Now that it was Ling Han who had suddenly stood up, he was naturally stunned. Ling Han smiled, yet he was in excruciating pain. Now, no matter what he did, he would still be in extreme pain. Zhao Exen spoke with Ling Han and told him about his recent experiences, what powerful enemies he had encountered, and how many prodigies he had suppressed. A thought flashed through Ling Han's mind. "Do you want to learn alchemy?" Zhao Exen faltered and replied, "Yes." Thus, Ling Han began to teach Zhao Exen alchemy. Unlike Ling Han's other disciples, alchemy was much more difficult for Zhao Exen. This was because Ling Han could not personally teach him and could only instruct him. Zhao Exen was also a mediocre person, so it was very difficult for him to comprehend. Thankfully, he was a very resilient person and had a stubborn streak. He was willing to study hard and was willing to endure hardships. Thus, his progress in alchemy was actually quite good, which surprised even Ling Han a little. After becoming an alchemist, Zhao Exen's cultivation progress became even faster, and he even refined many alchemical pills for Zhao Yuliu and the others to prolong their lives. Only now did they realize that Ling Han was actually alive, and they were all astonished. Zhao Yuliu was even more emotional. She had not thought that her benevolence back then would actually change the fate of the Zhao family. Naturally, it was in a good direction. But in everyone's eyes, Ling Han was only a dying man. Though he could barely walk now, his injuries were still extremely severe, and he could die at any moment. Ling Han was recovering from his injuries, while Zhao Exen was fighting everywhere. After 70 years, he finally became a great elite of the spiritual ocean tier, and the members of the Zhao family above him had pretty much all passed away. There was nothing he could do. The effects of the alchemical pills he could refine now were limited, and Ling Han had only pulled out 3 spikes of Great Tao, which were far from enough to use his mystical abilities. Moreover, unless he had no other choice, he did not want to interfere with the life and death of mortals. Living a long life did not necessarily mean happiness. Being able to live a good life was already enough. Zhao Exen continued his legend, and no one knew that there was actually an incredibly powerful celestial king standing behind Zhao Exen. More than 100 years later, Zhao Exen married a wife, had children, and had many children. Chapter 2501. The Zhao clan was no longer the Zhao clan of the past. The present Zhao clan was just like a great clan in the Eternal Heart continent. The leading figure was in the spiritual infant tier, and it was difficult to find a match for him in the world. Furthermore, Zhao Exen also established another mountain as his residence, choosing a new location for the Zhao clan. However, Ling Han did not go there, and stayed in the ancestral grounds of the Zhao clan in Guanglong town. Yes, the martial art of this small world was not flourishing. Spiritual infant tier cultivators could dominate, and there were no deity transformation, heaven tier, or shattering void tier elites. Ling Han found out in detail that it was not that there were no geniuses here, or that it was like the lower realm, with forces of the ancient realm having to harvest once every 10,000 years. In this place, the spiritual qi was not abundant enough, leading to the spiritual infant tier being the peak stage. Zhao Xian being able to step onto this cultivation level in a short 100 years was naturally because he knew alchemy, which made up for the lack of spiritual qi. And because of this, he could still continue to improve his strength under such an arduous environment and at an astonishing speed. And at this time, Ling Han finally recovered some origin qi. He calculated that there would still be 300 years before he recovered enough strength to tear open this fragile seal of the small world. He continued to cultivate. In any case, even if he entered the ancient realm, he would not be able to return to the celestial realm for a while, so he might as well wait until he recovered to the ascending origin tier or celestial king tier before returning to find the empress and the others. He believed that with a paragon like Zhou Heng keeping watch, he could not possibly play any tricks. At most, he could reach the first step of the heavenly venerable tier, but that would be a matter of who knew how many years later. Ling Han kept a very low profile. In the entire Zhao clan, aside from Zhao Xian who knew of his existence, only a few people in charge of guarding the ancestral grounds knew of his existence. 200 years, 300 years, time flew. 300 years later, the Zhao clan had already become a leviathan of the eternal heart continent because Zhao Xian had already advanced into the shattering void tier. Next, he would split open the skies and allow the whole continent to ascend into the ancient realm. Only then could he fundamentally change the environment of this small world. Ling Han naturally did not mind at all. When Zhao Xian specifically asked him about this matter, Ling Han only nodded calmly, letting him make his own decision. Zhao Xian had heard from Ling Han that there were as many experts as there were clouds in the ancient realm. With his meager strength, it was not enough for him to head over. He could only become the subordinate of a powerful force. There was a saying that it was better to be the head of a chicken than the tail of an ox. Instead of living a carefree life here, he had to go to the ancient realm to suffer. "Senior, I've still decided to split open the sky," Zhao Xian said. He was unable to fathom Ling Han's strength. All he felt was that this capable person was surrounded by an aura of death, and his injuries were so severe that he could die at any moment. However, he was still alive. Although Ling Han had never spoken of his origins, Zhao Xian firmly believed that he was from the ancient realm and had no choice but to flee to the small world to seek refuge after being hunted down by his enemies. Although this wasn't right, it was actually very close to the truth. The difference was that Ling Han didn't come from the ancient realm, but from the celestial realm. Moreover, he already stood at the highest level of the celestial realm. Ling Han did not comment. However, if Zhao Xian really managed to open the sky and go to the ancient realm, he was willing to do something. Of course, protecting Zhao Xian was a piece of cake. He also wanted to do something that he had wanted to do in the past but never did. Fusing the immortal realm and the netherworld realm. With his present strength, with himself as the core, it was completely possible for him to fuse the ancient realms into one in a short period of time. Of course, this short period of time was also relative. It might be a few thousand years. The Zhao clan also had different opinions on the matter of splitting open the sky. Some agreed, thinking that after going to the ancient realm, they would have better prospects for development, but some thought that it was better not to go. How great it was to be an overlord here. No matter how poor their aptitude and strength were, who would dare disrespect them when they went out? However, who could dissuade Zhao Xian? After preparing for 100 years, Zhao Xian had also polished the shattering void tier to an incredibly solid level. There was really no more room for improvement, and he finally managed to split open the sky. His aptitude wasn't very good. Although he had practiced the cultivation technique that Ling Han had taught him, he could barely be considered a genius at most. This battle had been very difficult, and he had almost failed. It was still Ling Han who had lent him a hand at the last moment, and only then had he managed to pass through the dangerous situation. A hole was opened in the ancient realm, and the permanent heart continent soared up, entering into an even wider world. After flying in the ancient realm for 3 days, the permanent heart continent arrived at a planet, landed, and merged into it. Breathing in the abundant spiritual qi, added with the fact that splitting open the sky was a great achievement, and the blessings of the heaven and earth washed over everyone's body, a considerable number of people instantly broke through on the spot. Long live! Long live! Long live! Countless people knelt down, incredibly excited. Meanwhile, Ling Han felt the blessings of the heaven and earth. For others, this was an indescribable benefit, but for him, it was completely useless. He lay there in boredom. After so many years, he could also use the regulations of time. Although he could only use a sliver of it, if a sliver of a celestial king was placed in the ancient realm, what kind of concept would that be? If I want to remove the shards of great Tao from my body, I can forget about it without several tens of thousands of years. Ling Han sighed. He had originally thought that he would only need a few thousand years, so he was naturally disappointed. Moreover, it was about time for Zhou Heng to bring people to that super high-grade plane, right? Ling Han frowned. He had not returned for so long, so would everyone think that he had perished together with Tiansheng? He shook his head. It was useless to think so much now. It was better to recover from his injuries first. In the outside world, Zhao Exen had succeeded in splitting open the sky and guided a continent to descend. This naturally immediately drew the reaction of the various forces on this planet. They all sent out envoys, wanting to take the Eternal Heart continent under their rule. Seeing the elites step into the air one after another, Zhao Exion's expression involuntarily became grave. Previously, he had been the sole ruler of a region, and it was difficult for him to meet an opponent, but now, a few envoys that had casually walked out were stronger than him, causing him to personally experience the severity of the situation. Become a subsidiary of my Mayungwa, but the Power Nation will be safe. Humph, I have come on behalf of General Qi of the Dalong Nation. Who is the ruler of this land? Hurry up and kneel to welcome him. One after another, the envoys introduced themselves, all extremely arrogant and domineering. After all, they all knew that in a world that had just descended after splitting open the sky, the strongest elite would at most be in the shattering void tier. So what did they need to fear? And all the cheers also stopped. Under the pressure of mountain river tier elites, everyone's hearts were filled with anxiety and worry, and incredibly heavy. This was a suppression of cultivation level. The mountain river tier was a height that only beings of the ancient realm could reach. Zhao Exion's expression was calm, and the words that Ling Han had said to him previously flashed through his mind. He slowly said, I am Zhao Exin, the ruler of the Eternal Heart continent. However, as to which force I belong to, I am not able to make the decision. I need to ask a lord for guidance. To say nothing of the envoys being shocked, even those officials were astonished. There was still a lord? Which lord? Wasn't Zhao Exen the strongest elite of the Eternal Heart continent? All right, then let's go. Haha, do you think you're some big shot? How dare you put on such airs? Come, I want to have someone with cultivation level of the mountain river tier. I wonder if this lord will be scared to death. All the envoys humphed coldly. They did not mind that after seeing that lord, they would first toy with him for a while, and then blast him into pieces. Follow me, Zhao Exan said. He led the way at the front, and led the envoys towards the ancestral grounds of the Zhao clan. He did not allow anyone to accompany him. Chapter 2502. The envoys were all carefree. To them, what kind of elites could there be in a small world that had just descended? When they arrived, they would just have to release the aura of the mountain river tier, and that so-called lord of theirs would definitely piss his pants in terror, kneel down, and loudly beg for mercy. Zhao Exion's imperial palace was not very far from the ancestral grounds of the Zhao clan, and added with the speed of their feet, they arrived in just over 2 hours. And this was because Zhao Exion's speed was too slow. If everyone could fly, they probably wouldn't even need less than an hour. After arriving here, Zhao Exion immediately became careful. Even if he had once been a king of a world, he couldn't help but recall the scene of him running around Ling Han when he was young. Ling Han had taught him a supreme cultivation technique word by word, which allowed him to stand proudly here today. To him, Ling Han was his master, and also an unfathomable monument of martial art. Seeing Zhao Xian's expression, the envoys were all extremely disdainful. Who was this attitude for? Did he think he could scare them? The person in charge of guarding the ancestral grounds hurriedly came forward and respectfully bowed to Zhao Xian. Zhao Xian waved his hand, indicating for them to rise, and then dismissed them. In front of a mountain river tier cultivator, numbers were of no advantage at all, and they would only be one-sided slaughtered. Zhao Xian strode forward and entered the ancestral grounds, but the envoys did not have so many rules. All of them stood proudly in the air, wanting to see what tricks Zhao Xian could play. "Hurry up, my time is precious," Ma Yingguo's envoy urged. Though the other envoys did not speak, their expressions were also filled with impatience. They had already played with this minor character for a long time and really did not have the patience to continue. The ancestral grounds of the Zhao clan naturally wouldn't be too big, and Zhao Xian very quickly arrived at the courtyard where Ling Han was recuperating. He pushed open the door and entered, only to see Ling Han sitting on a chair, basking in the sun. Though close to 1,000 years had passed, Ling Han still looked the same as before. His whole body was covered with wounds, and one could see pieces of bone. "Lord!" Zhao Xian half knelt on the ground and paid his respects to Ling Han. Ling Han had never said that he would accept him as a disciple, so he did not dare to call himself a disciple. Ling Han did not respond. It was as if he was dead. Anyone who suffered such heavy injuries would not be far from death and could only linger on with their last breath. "Huh, so this is that person?" Ma Yingguo's envoy couldn't help laughing mockingly. The other envoys were the same. What did they see in their eyes? A cripple, injured to the point where all the bones in his body were broken, even his skull had collapsed, and the shape of his face was distorted. Could he still be considered a human? "Old fart, I'll send you off." Ma Yingguo's envoy was the most excited. He descended from the sky and swatted at Ling Han's head. "How dare you!" Zhao Xian attacked. So what if there was a huge gap between their abilities? He just couldn't hold it in. Purring, he threw out a punch, but Ma Yingguo's envoy suddenly froze and was hit squarely by Ma Yingguo's fist. Instantly, he tumbled away. This was when Ma Yingguo's envoy had advanced into the mountain river tier, and had also refined his physique to the level of the shattering void tier. Otherwise, this punch would definitely have blasted his head into smithereens. Even so, his nose had collapsed, and one of his eyes was crooked. Blood flowed profusely. What's going on? The other envoys all paled in shock. Though Ma Yingguo's cultivation level was not high, Mountain River Tier was also an elite that could establish his own faction in the ancient realm. This was the threshold that separated mortals from immortals. Zhao Xian had not crossed this threshold at all, so what right did he have to injure an elite of the Mountain River Tier with a single punch? Strange. A chill involuntarily rose up on their backs. The more they could not understand, the more panicky they naturally felt. Could it be that there really was a lord with astonishing strength? Zhao Xian was also stunned, because he had never known Ling Han's strength. Only when this punch succeeded did he feel reassured. Ling Han's strength was difficult for him to fathom. "Chao Dong, what happened just now?" someone asked Ma Yingguo's envoy. He was the envoy of the Right Minister of the Golden Leopard Nation, and the Golden Leopard Nation was an imperial court, while the Ma Yingguo Nation was a royal court. There was a clear distinction between the two, and he had such confidence. Chao Dong touched the corner of his mouth. This punch was very painful, but it had not severely wounded him. He spat out a mouthful of blood and then said, "My body seemed to have paused for a moment, and then a punch struck me. I could not move at all, and had no way to avoid it." There was actually such a thing? The envoy of the Golden Leopard Nation frowned deeply. He strode down from the skies, and stopped about 30 meters away from Ling Han. He clasped his hands and said, "I am Hu Biao, a subordinate of Lord Yi of the Right of the Golden Leopard Nation. May I ask how I should address you, sir?" He did not dare to be careless. If it had really been Ling Han who had done something just now, then the latter's strength would definitely be world-shaking. Thus, he immediately reported his background to intimidate Ling Han. However, Ling Han did not react. All the envoys were embarrassed. What should they do now? Advance or retreat? Retreat? That was too cowardly, wasn't it? They had come aggressively, yet fled with their tails between their legs. Furthermore, how were they going to report when they returned? They could say that they had encountered a powerful foe, but who was this powerful foe? Was it really this person who only had one breath left, or perhaps was already dead? But in terms of advance, someone had already suffered just now, causing everyone to be incredibly wary. Who would dare to make a move rashly? Thus, they were in a dilemma. But they could not possibly continue to be in a deadlock, right? Hu Biao kept staring at Ling Han. No matter how he looked at it, he felt that Ling Han was a cripple who was so severely injured that he could not be saved. Putting aside him, as long as someone with a bit more strength stepped on him, they would be able to add more injuries to his injuries, and he would immediately die. Could this be an elite? He did not believe it. This thought lingered, and he became bold. He could not help but take a step forward, walking towards Ling Han. Zhao Xian immediately took a defensive stance. His opponent was in the mountain river tier, and his strength was who knew how many times stronger than his own. Hu Biao did not press too close. He only took a few steps and then attacked brazenly, throwing a punch at Ling Han through the air. This was him leaving a way out for himself. If Ling Han was only trash, then with his mountain river tier strength, he would naturally be able to kill both Ling Han and Zhao Xian at the same time. If he was not, then he would also maintain a safe distance, and he could immediately turn around and flee. This was a good idea, but the problem was that he was facing a celestial king. The force of the punch reached him, yet it solidified at a speed visible to the naked eye, and then reversed as if space had suddenly reversed. Pung! This punch returned at a speed even faster than its momentum. Hu Biao was completely unable to block it, and also suffered a heavy blow to his face. He hurriedly covered his face in pain, tears involuntarily flowing out of his eyes. Seeing this scene, the envoys naturally no longer had any doubts. There was indeed an elite on Zhao Xian's side, though it might not be that cripple. Let's go! They turned around and fled at the same time. This bone was too hard, and they could not chew through it. But a scene that caused them to tremble in fear appeared. Though their legs were moving very quickly, their bodies did not move in the slightest, which was incredibly strange. Yet Zhao Xian moved his head closer to Ling Han, as if he was listening to something. Not long after, an expression of surprise appeared on his face, but he still said, "Listen, all of you. When you return, tell your ruler to scram here and ask for an audience." Chapter 2504. Who is this man? None of them recognized him, but they all felt a chill from the bottom of their hearts, because they didn't know how he had appeared. Just how strong was this person? Hey, the treasure light is coming from your body. The tall man stared at Ling Han, and his eyes suddenly turned sharp. Did you eat the peerless treasure medicine? So what if I am, and so what if I'm not? Ling Han asked calmly. His opponent's strength could not be hidden from him. He was a Genesis tier saint, and a great saint at that. But in his eyes, so what if he was a great saint? If that's the case, then I'll refine you into a medicinal pill, the great sage said coldly. How dare you? Zhao Xian and the others shouted in unison. The great saint general glared at them, and a terrifying aura emanated from him, causing everyone to feel suffocated. It was an indescribable feeling of discomfort. Do you think you have the right to speak in front of me? With a thought, more than 10 fists rose from the ground and bombarded Zhao Xian and the others. Sage! Zhao Xian and the others said in a trembling voice. They were certain that the other party had made a move. The sages were the strongest existences in the entire immortal world. Especially after a huge incident that happened tens of thousands of years ago, countless sages disappeared en masse, and the number of sages that remained could be counted on one's fingers. Naturally, each and every one of them was a supreme existence. Ping, 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 these fists exploded before they could even land. Dust to dust, dust to dust. The great saint's eyes widened, and finally revealed a look of caution. Who are you? He realized that Ling Han's cultivation was no weaker than his own. Ling Han. Ling Han, the great sage muttered, frowning slightly. He felt that the name was vaguely familiar, as if he had heard it somewhere before. "Kneel down and admit your mistake, and I can spare your life," Ling Han said. If it was tens of thousands of years ago, if someone wanted to kill him, he would definitely stop them by killing. But because his body had just recovered, he was in a good mood, so he was willing to give the other party a way out. The great sage flew into a rage. He was a sage, yet he dared to ask him to kneel. What was wrong with him? He couldn't be bothered to think who Ling Han was, and directly attacked. Boom, a palm shot out, and the stars in the sky trembled. This was the might of a saint. In the past, the immortal realm had been bathed in blood by Ling Han, and a great many saints had died. Moreover, a great number of saints had been brought to the celestial realm by him. Now, there were only a few saints left. Ling Han pretended he didn't see it, but when the attacks were about to reach his head, they of sages, they were stopped. Ling Han's the sage. This scene was very spectacular. Countless attacks fell, as if they could destroy the world and even blow up this planet. But now, they had stopped in violation of any laws. Hong long long. Furious thunder rumbled between heaven and earth. This was the heaven and earth discovering that a creature stronger than this world had appeared, starting to deal with it. Ling Han rebuked lightly, and pointed a finger at the sky. Pung! The furious lightning that filled the sky instantly dissipated. He was a celestial king, and was once the ruler of a world. His level was far higher than that of the ancient realm. His finger, his shout, contained boundless power. Everyone was stunned. That was a heavenly tribulation. How could it be repulsed? You came from the legendary celestial realm. His expression suddenly changed, and he remembered. Ling Han, you are Ling Han, you are that Ling Han. Ling Han had killed many sages, and the news had spread throughout the immortal realm. But some places were too far away, and it was unknown how long it had been since they received the news. Many people didn't believe it was true. However, the sage had appeared and cast a technique. His attack had strangely stopped. Even the heavenly tribulation had been repulsed. Was this not proof? Ling Han shook his head. I gave you a chance, but you didn't want it. He moved, and crushed the attacks that filled the sky into an orb of light. Then he stuffed it into that great saint's mouth. With a light pat, the orb of light entered the great saint's stomach. Spare me, my lord. That great saint was naturally horrified. He still wanted to beg for mercy, but pung, the orb of light inside his body suddenly exploded. He was instantly turned into pieces, but the shock waves of the explosion didn't spread out. Rather, they were confined within a small space. To Ling Han, this was naturally as easy as turning over his hand. Zhao Exin and the others were all stunned. They had already overestimated Ling Han, and thought that he was a Genesis tier saint. They hadn't thought that they would still underestimate him. This guy was who knew how many times more awesome than a saint. Ling Han swept an eye over everyone and said, Our fate ends here today. My lord, everyone hurriedly said. The meaning behind Ling Han's words was that he was about to leave. Ling Han waved his hand. All good things must come to an end. Cultivate well. If you can improve further, perhaps we will meet again one day. He wasn't a wishy-washy person. With a single step, he had already crossed an immeasurable distance. He had already repaid the favor that he should. Furthermore, he still had other matters to attend to, so he naturally couldn't stay here forever. He arrived at a junction between the immortal realm and the netherworld. There were still battles taking place here. There were innumerable low-level cultivators fighting over fated opportunities here. Ling Han landed. There just happened to be cultivators from the immortal realm and the netherworld engaged in a great battle for a godly medicine. His appearance also immediately attracted the attention of both sides. Both sides slowed down their attacks to prevent him from taking advantage of the situation. Don't advance any further, or I'll cut off your head. A cultivator from the immortal realm shouted. In the face of a fated opportunity, he didn't have the slightest feeling that Ling Han was one of his own. Ling Han ignored him. Instead, he sat down in a cross-legged position. He stretched out his hands, one connecting to the immortal realm, and the other connecting to the netherworld. With his body as the core, he forcefully fused the two realms together. Boom! Heavenly tribulation immediately rolled over. The two realms were separated. This had already been a reality for several epochs, and had formed a kind of power. How could it be easily destroyed? In the past, it had been three heavenly venerables who had moved out to separate the two realms. How difficult had that been? Thankfully, the two realms had been one in the first place, and the difficulty of fusing them back together was far less than separating them. Thus, it had been three heavenly venerables who had moved out to accomplish it. Now, Ling Han could accomplish it all by himself. Of course, it wasn't something that could be accomplished in one go. Rather, it would take a very long time. "What are you doing?" Those cultivators who were fighting immediately shouted at Ling Han, "What are you doing?" Ling Han still ignored them. The two-realm battlefield was currently undergoing a drastic change. It had truly fused together, and the regulations of the heaven and earth had changed, becoming complete. Why do I feel like I still have a lot of room for improvement? My foundation is actually so unstable? I can still be 10 times stronger. The people nearby were the first to benefit. The two realms fused together, and this was the true ancient realm. It would allow one to take the final step after reaching the Genesis tier, and advance into the celestial realm. It was just like the people from a small world who had come to the ancient realm after splitting open the sky. The first feeling they had was that they could immediately break through. This kind of strange change immediately drew the attention of the elites of the two-realm battlefield. They looked at Ling Han, and couldn't help but be stunned. Who exactly was he? Furthermore, who knew what this kind of change would ultimately lead to? Why does this master look a bit like that person from the legends? Someone recognized Ling Han. After all, Ling Han had been too powerful in the past. Cell phones read more refreshingly. Chapter 2505. Ling Han merged the two realms. His speed was very fast, merging a star system in a short 10 years. But to the boundless ancient realm, this was just an insignificant start. He immersed himself, countless comprehensions rising. The ancient realm was actually also a part of the immortal domain. With him as the core, merging the two realms was equivalent to making him the ruler of heaven and earth again. During the transformation, he peered into the changes of heaven and earth, that unique power surging. This world, even Empyreans couldn't destroy it. No matter how great the destruction, under this unique power, it would still reform, nurturing vitality. Unless the immortal domain collapsed, otherwise, no one could truly destroy this place. The primordial chaos of time circulated within Ling Han's body. The ancient realm existed for as long as the immortal domain, but it was impossible for Ling Han to enter the core of the immortal domain. He didn't have that kind of strength, even Empyreans wouldn't be able to do so. And now, the situation was special. The three Empyreans separated the ancient realm, giving Ling Han a chance to merge the two realms into one. This was the general trend. The heaven and earth also had this inclination, or else it would be impossible for the two-realm battlefield to appear. This was an instinctive fusion. Hence, the heaven and earth couldn't resist Ling Han's good intentions. This benefited Ling Han. Some things that were indestructible through the ages surged in his mind, allowing him to refer to and learn from them. This was a power that only belonged to the celestial realm, and was unique. Even in the ancient realm, there were still bits and pieces of it left behind. Ling Han continuously captured them, and converted them into his comprehension. He couldn't contain his joy. This kind of opportunity was too rare, equivalent to the three Empyreans joining hands to give him good fortune. How many people in the world could obtain it? He forgot everything, immersing himself in this kind of comprehension, continuously merging the two realms to obtain even more ancient things. 100 years, 1,000 years, time flew by. Ling Han forgot about time, even wishing that this would never end. More and more people came after hearing the news. Everyone felt the changes of heaven and earth. The two realms were merging, and then there was no distinction between them. The heaven and earth of the immortal realm no longer targeted the life forms of the netherworld, and the netherworld was the same. No, now the immortal realm and the netherworld no longer existed. There was only one realm, the ancient realm. Lord. But, my lord. Everyone knelt down respectfully. They could feel that the world they had touched was more complete, and they had the opportunity to advance to a higher level. What kind of power was needed to merge the two worlds? This naturally made everyone revere him, and everyone could see the benefits, so how could they not be grateful to Ling Han? However, no one could obtain Ling Han's true body now. His body was entangled with incomparably ancient things, burying him deep within. However, he still maintained a cross-legged human form, just that his body was growing larger and larger. This was because Ling Han was extracting more and more ancient substances. Thousands of years later, this place had become a holy land. From planets far away, people constantly came to express their gratitude to Ling Han. But there were also people who didn't believe in the legends. They believed that there were natural treasures that had appeared here. They had tried to attack, but they couldn't get close at all. They were directly blasted into ashes. There were too many examples like this, so naturally, no one dared to try it again. They all obediently prostrated themselves at the side. 10,000 years, 30,000 years, 100,000 years. 1,000,000 years, Ling Han suddenly woke up from his state of comprehension. Because the two realms had completely merged, there would be no more immortal realm or netherworld in the future. There would only be the ancient realm. It ended just like that. Ling Han couldn't help but smack his lips. He still hadn't had enough. He had a feeling that his body had been branded with the unique power of the celestial realm. Even if he went to a super high level plane, as long as he became a ninth heaven celestial king, he could still use this brand to cultivate to become a heavenly venerable. And super high level planes also had their own unique power. If Ling Han could merge these two kinds of power, how strong would he, a first step heavenly venerable, be? Not to mention reaching the level of a second step heavenly venerable, he could even sweep aside first step heavenly venerables, right? Thankfully, he was merging the two realms now. If he had done this when he was in the Genesis tier, he would definitely have squandered this great opportunity. He discovered to his surprise that his cultivation level had actually reached the peak stage of the second heaven without him realizing it. Merging the two realms gave him too many comprehensions. As mentioned previously, this was equivalent to 3 heavenly venerables helping him cultivate. After experiencing another 1,000,000 years, how could his cultivation level not advance by leaps and bounds? However, why was there no heavenly tribulation? Could it be that because he was working for heaven and earth specially gave him preferential treatment? What a strange feeling. There was actually no heavenly tribulation when he broke through. Heaven and earth suddenly moved, and a boundless fragrance descended, enveloping Ling Han's head. Ling Han's cultivation level instantly began to rise, and his sea of consciousness was filled with endless comprehension. The great tool transformed, and the celestial seed had long since grown into a large tree. Now it was a celestial flower that had bloomed, and then rapidly withered, bearing a fruit. Third transformation of the celestial seed, he was going to become a third heaven celestial king. This made Ling Han astonished. The heaven and earth had actually bestowed good fortune upon him? What good deed had he done? Wasn't he still called an unfilial son by heaven? Ling Han immediately came to a realization. He had merged the two realms, and this was a great contribution to the heaven and earth. The heaven and earth were heartless and the fairest. Contributions naturally had to be rewarded. With the heaven and earth's blessing, he stepped into the third heaven without any suspense. The celestial seed transformed violently, and the celestial tree bore fruit. When the fruit fell, it immediately sprouted and transformed back into the celestial tree. Of course, it was only the size of a tiny seedling. There was no other way. Although the contribution from merging the ancient world was great, the ancient world was only a subsidiary of the immortal domain. Its power was limited. It could only push Ling Han to the third heaven because he had already reached the peak of the second heaven previously. It happened to give him a boost, sending him to the third heaven. This time, the heaven and earth did not show favoritism. Immediately, thunderclouds surged. The heavenly tribulation had arrived. The heavenly tribulation was extremely terrifying. It did not shrink at all, and it even reached the combat strength of a fourth heaven celestial king. Ling Han did not dare to be careless. He hurriedly released his cultivation level. Boom! The aura of an immortal king surged, instantly spreading throughout the entire ancient world. Firstly, this was because he was too strong, and secondly, he had merged the ancient world, so it was inevitable that he would leave behind a sliver of his own imprint in it, just like a precious tool. Thus, the transmission of his will was also ridiculously fast. The aura of an immortal king surged. This was an invincible power of the ancient realm, and it was so powerful that others did not even have the right to look up to it. In an instant, everyone knelt down, trembling in fear. Boom! A massive black hole appeared, swallowing Ling Han, and the tribulation clouds that filled the sky immediately disappeared completely. Ling Han was too strong, and could not be allowed to stay in this realm. He had to leave. Otherwise, either the ancient realm would crush him to death, or he would cause the ancient realm to explode. Thus he left. Ling Han passed through the barrier. As long as one's power reached the peak stage of the Genesis tier, they would be qualified to blast open this barrier and enter the celestial realm. And now, Ling Han was already a third heaven celestial king, and his battle prowess was powerful to what extent, so he naturally easily broke into the celestial realm. The scenery in front of him suddenly changed, and he appeared in a forest. A familiar aura assaulted him, letting him know that he had returned to the celestial realm. Quang, thunder rumbled, and the heavenly tribulation also followed him like a shadow. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, "Come, just in time to let me see what level my own strength has reached." Chapter 2506. Hong, the heavenly tribulation descended, transforming into a massive lightning-heavy sword that slashed toward Ling Han. Ling Han laughed heartily, condensing the power of the natural order to meet it head-on. Boom! His fists exploded with dazzling light, clashing head-on with the heavenly tribulation. The power of the heavenly tribulation had indeed reached the level of the fourth heaven, but Ling Han's battle prowess was even stronger. He started from the middle stage of the fourth heaven and soared straight to the fifth heaven. The immortal seed was currently quickly sprouting, going through its third growth. One could see that there were 3 golden patterns on the immortal seed, 2 of them extremely deep, while the third was extremely faint, so faint that it was almost impossible to see. However, it was currently slowly becoming deeper. When the heavenly tribulation descended, it was the fastest time to improve. Of course, the power of heaven and earth was the most fundamental and most beneficial to the growth of the nomological laws. He let out a long roar and brandished his fists like the wind. He was not afraid of the heavenly tribulation at all and shattered it in just a few moves. This was the suppression of strength. The heavenly tribulation was already strong enough. Ling Han was clearly undergoing the third heavenly tribulation, but what descended was the fourth heavenly tribulation. However, Ling Han was even more monstrous. His battle prowess started from the middle of the fourth heavenly tribulation and was advancing towards the fifth heavenly tribulation. He urged the immortal seed in his body to grow. This was a rare opportunity. In reality, his cultivation had risen too quickly. It was as if in the blink of an eye, he had rushed from the first level to the third level. There was definitely a situation where his realm was not stable. Therefore, he planned to stabilize it after this breakthrough. Half a day passed by quickly. Ling Han stood still with a smile at the corner of his mouth. His current cultivation had stopped at the early stage of the third celestial layer. It looked like he could take 5 out of 10 steps, which was very good. Where is this? Ling Han sensed the density of spiritual energy. The difference between the eastern and western celestial regions was still huge. Western celestial domain, he immediately told himself. Then, he flew towards the boundless sea realm. He wanted to head east and return to the eastern celestial realm to find his parents. He believed that if the Empress and the others were still in the eastern celestial realm, they would definitely be waiting for him there. And if they had already left the immortal region, then they would definitely have left a message for him there. The speed of an immortal king was extremely fast, especially for an immortal king like Ling Han who was proficient in the laws of space. It only took him about half a month to arrive at the seaside. In the past, this sea was extremely dangerous to him. But now it was a level path for him. As long as he didn't encounter any immortal king realm great beasts at the 7th level of the heavens or above, he would be able to face them calmly. He began to cross the sea. He didn't care whether or not he would pass through the nests of powerful sea beasts along the way. He just moved forward in a straight line. Some sea beasts didn't even notice him passing by, and those that did notice him were no match for him at all. They could only tremble in fear, rejoicing that Ling Han didn't make a move. However, not all sea beasts were like this. When Ling Han passed by an island, a golden-winged roc soared into the sky and chased after him. This great pung was proficient in the laws of space. With a flap of its wings, it could travel an endless distance. It let out a shrill cry, and the sound waves vibrated, possessing terrifying destructive power. At first, Ling Han didn't want to cause trouble. After dodging a few times, this great pung still didn't give up. He couldn't help but be angered and stood still. Die! The golden-winged roc sent a divine sense toward Ling Han, and its figure also rapidly descended, its claws pressing down on Ling Han. It was as if they were forged from divine metal and could easily tear apart the body of a low-level immortal king. It was a 4th heaven being. Ling Han humphed, and the divine demon sword appeared, and then slashed down. Poof! Blood flew everywhere, and the golden-winged roc immediately coughed up blood. Its claws were forcibly sliced off. It paled in shock. Only now did it realize that Ling Han had been holding back not because he couldn't defeat it, but rather because he didn't take it seriously at all. It hurriedly flapped its wings, wanting to escape, but since Ling Han had made a move, how could he let it leave? He added another slash. Pooh! Another burst of blood splattered, and the golden-winged roc instantly fell from the sky. However, it hadn't fallen much before it was caught by Ling Han and stored into his spatial god tool. With his current strength, creating a spatial god tool was only a matter of a single thought. Things that flew in the sky were extremely delicious in the first place, and this was a celestial king, so how could its meat be wasted? The heaven and earth mourned, and boundless blood rain fell. This also scared the great beasts of this sea region into chasing into the depths of the sea, fearing that Ling Han would start a massacre. Ling Han smiled faintly and set off to continue on his way. Celestial kings weren't cabbages, after all. Though there were many celestial kings in the boundless sea region, they themselves were also ridiculously large. How high were the chances that Ling Han could coincidentally pass by the nest of a celestial king great beast? Another month later, he passed through the boundless sea region and set foot on the land of the eastern celestial realm. He slightly identified the direction and then continued on his way. 8 days later, he arrived at the place where his parents were. He was slightly fearful. After all, he really had to leave for too long this time, and was afraid that he would see a scene that would break his soul. "Father, mother," he called out loudly when he arrived. "Hey, what are you calling for?" There were guards here, and they immediately reprimanded him. "Are you an idiot? Running here to call for your father and mother," a guard said with a chuckle. Why does this person look slightly familiar?" "Lord Ling Han." He was recognized, and someone immediately went to report. Now it was lively. His parents, uncle, big brother, third brother, as well as Lu Yutong and the other women all came to welcome him. Seeing that Ling Han was fine, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Though they all firmly believed that Ling Han would definitely be fine, without seeing him, they were still slightly flustered and couldn't calm down. Ling Han gave a brief account of his own affairs. Though more than 1 million years had passed, he really hadn't done much. It was only a few words, but the experiences of others were much richer. Then he naturally talked about the news of the Empress and the others. Zhou Heng deliberately waited for a few thousand years for Ling Han, and even used some means to find him, but this was a celestial realm, after all, so he couldn't use his full ability, fearing that he would accidentally explode this plane. Thus, he couldn't find Ling Han, and could only leave with the others. The Empress, Hu Niu, Bewitching Maiden Ro, the Rain Emperor, and the others all left. It was fine as long as they had the aptitude of a monarch tier. In super high-level planes, even monarch tiers had a sliver of hope of becoming a heavenly venerable. Of course, this chance was pitifully low, perhaps 1 in 100 million, but there was still hope, after all. What surprised Ling Han was that Tianxing was actually on the list as well. This guy killed everywhere, and at least 10,000 celestial kings had died at his hands, and he actually went to a super high-level plane? It said that Tianxing's aptitude is too good and has a very high chance of becoming a heavenly venerable in the future, Feng Piyun said. This naturally wasn't what he heard from Zhou Heng, but was relaying the words of the Empress and the others. Ling Han frowned. Come on, the battle situation in the super high-level planes was incredibly tense. Otherwise, they wouldn't have wanted even a killing machine like Tianxing. Only a heavenly venerable could stand against frenzy. The difference was that a 7th-step heavenly venerable was the absolute main force, and a 1st-step heavenly venerable could only be a bystander, but no matter how much of a bystander they were, they could still be of some use. This is the dimensional teleportation talisman that Lord Zhou left for you. Feng Piyun handed over another jade talisman that looked ordinary. Lord Zhou said that as long as you open it with the power of a celestial king, you can send about 10 people to a super high-level plane. Chapter 2508. 3 figures flew over from afar. Because the visibility here was only about 1 kilometer or so, when Ling Han arrived, these 3 people had actually already arrived in front of him. Ling Han's eyes swept over, and saw that these 3 were 2 men and 1 woman. They were all very young, but had an imposing appearance. They were actually all ascending origin tier, and all at the consummate level. They were only a few tens of millions of years old, but they had all reached the consummate level of the ascending origin tier, and were only a step away from becoming a celestial king. But how were the cultivation levels of martial art divided here? Ling Han only determined from the strength of the aura they exuded. They were equivalent to ascending origin tier beings of the celestial realm, and their talent was truly extraordinary. These 3 people didn't pay any attention to Ling Han, and were only focused on killing that giant frog. Because the giant frog had bumped into Ling Han was already dizzy and disoriented. He was forcefully suppressed by these 3 people, and it was not long before he died. With the poison sac of this gold-pattern frog, I can cure Master's wife's illness. The 3 people put away the large frog, all incredibly happy. Ling Han also smiled. He finally saw people, and knew that he was not blindly wandering around in this place. Then, as long as he let these 3 lead the way, or simply followed them in secret, he would naturally be able to walk out of this swamp. Why is there someone here? Strange, dark light tier. Dark light tier dares to enter here? The 3 people discovered Ling Han, and all looked surprised. In these few days, Ling Han had returned to the severing mundane tier in terms of regulations. Since they said he was in some dark light tier, this was probably the division of cultivation levels in super high-level planes. Dark light corresponded to severing mundane tier. How did you enter here? A young man asked Ling Han. He was dressed in green. Ling Han was completely unfamiliar with this world, so he simply kept an extremely low profile and said, I don't know either. I was just practicing cultivation and was suddenly swallowed by a black hole. Then I found myself here, and I can't leave no matter what. His words were mixed, and actually matched the truth very well. However, he did not say that he had come from the celestial realm through a teleportation talisman, and others might not believe him unless he displayed the might of his body technique. Why bother? The 3 people on the other side looked at each other and felt that it was inconceivable. If that was the case, how could a person in the dark light realm be able to come to the Cloud Dream Swamp? It is indeed possible for space to become chaotic and send people to any corner of the world. Another young man in blue said, I heard from Master that this is because of the Outer Realm War, which affected the stability of space. The green-robed man and the red-robed woman both nodded. Since their master said so, it must be true. Bring him along, the red-clothed woman said. The green-clothed man nodded. With his little strength, he would have been eaten by the wild beasts here long ago, not to mention the fact that he would need many years to walk out of the Cloud Dream Swamp. Let's get him out of the swamp first. The blue-robed man nodded in agreement. The green-robed man made his move. His power transformed into a giant hand that grabbed Ling Han. The three of them flew up into the sky and flew away. Their speed was not as fast as Ling Han's, but Ling Han did not care about this little bit of time. After thanking them, he began to cultivate. He wanted to return to the immortal king realm in terms of the laws as soon as possible. After all, this limited the growth of his physical arts. Seeing that Ling Han actually closed his eyes and began to cultivate, the red-clothed woman and the other two clicked their tongues in wonder. They thought to themselves that this kid's mental fortitude was truly astonishing. He could actually still calm his heart at a time like this. This journey actually took as long as 3 months. They finally left the swamp, and a mountain forest appeared in front of them. The green-robed man put Ling Han down. Just as he was about to let Ling Han leave on his own, his eyes widened. "Senior brother Luo, what's wrong?" the red-clothed woman asked. The green-robed man pointed at Ling Han, his face trembling. "What's wrong with him? Did he grow horns on his head?" The blue-robed man laughed. However, when his gaze swept across Ling Han, his eyes also popped out. Fourth tier dark light. The red-clothed woman also went over and immediately exclaimed. What kind of joke was this? Previously, this guy had just entered the dark light realm. How could he be at the 4th tier dark light now? This advancement speed was so fast that it was unbelievable. Prodigy! Unparalleled prodigy! They were all extremely shocked. Strange, why didn't the heavenly tribulation come? The green-robed man muttered. This didn't make sense. No matter what, there should be at least 3 heavenly tribulations. The red-clothed woman pondered for a moment. This kind of advancement speed is rare in the world. Perhaps he is favored by heaven and earth, so the heavenly tribulation didn't affect him. Was that even possible? The green-robed man and the blue-robed man looked at each other, but it seemed that this was the only reasonable explanation. What's your name? The red-clothed woman suddenly asked Ling Han. Ling Han, are you willing to join the Heavy Moon sect? The red-clothed woman asked again. Ling Han pretended to ponder. I still don't know anything about the Heavy Moon sect. The green-robed man immediately understood. This was an exceptional seedling. If he could be recruited into the sect, he would definitely become the sect's stabilizing force in the future. Moreover, they were the people who had discovered Ling Han. This friendship was enough to last a lifetime. It doesn't matter if you don't know anything. You can't return to the old haunt now anyway, he said. The blue-robed man hurriedly nodded. Yes, let's go and have some fun. If they went to the Heavy Moon sect, they were confident that Ling Han would never want to leave again. That place was the Celestial King realm. Ling Han also wanted to understand this world, so he nodded and agreed to travel with the 3 of them. The 4 of them arrived at the nearest city. There was a transportation portal there, so they could easily travel to different places. Ling Han also took the opportunity to chat with the 3 of them. He pretended not to know anything about this world, so he could understand it better. The green-robed man was called Luo Xing, the blue-robed man was called Ji Xueming, and the red-clothed woman was called Li Wan. They were all disciples of the Heavy Moon sect. This time, they came out for the Big Frog. The reason was that their teacher's wife, who was also the wife of the Heavy Moon sect's leader, had contracted an illness. They needed the Big Frog to cure her. Their teacher could not leave because he needed to constantly use his own strength to maintain the wife's life. Otherwise, she could die at any time. Therefore, they acted on behalf of their teacher to find a way to save her. Although it took some time, the outcome was still good. Added with Ling Han, their trip could be said to be perfect. This super high-level plane was called the Flame Frost Plane. The division of martial art was actually similar to that of the Celestial Realm. It was just that the name was different. And here, Celestial Kings were also called Celestial Kings, and Heavenly Venerables were also called Heavenly Venerables. There was no difference. However, these 3 people did not know anything about this terrifying big guy called Madness. They only knew that there was a foreign battlefield. There was a great battle there, and even ascending origin tiers like them did not have the right to participate. Ling Han guessed that was the place where he fought madness. Indeed, even celestial kings did not have the right to participate, what more ascending origin tiers. Even if there was a transportation portal that could greatly reduce the travel time, they still used more than half a year's time to arrive at the foot of the tranquil moon mountain. This was where the heavy moon sect was. However, the tranquil moon mountain was incredibly large, and there was actually quite a distance from here to the heavy moon sect. Ho-ho, stop. Suddenly, 10 people appeared in front of them, blocking their path. Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 2509. 10 people appeared and blocked Ling Han's group from entering the mountain. Who are you? Luo Xing immediately shouted. A bearded middle-aged man rubbed his chin and smiled. It doesn't matter who we are. What's important is that you stay here and have a heart-to-heart talk with us. Brother Maki, we don't want to have a heart-to-heart talk with 3 men, someone immediately shouted. That's right, even if we want to have a heart-to-heart talk, it's with a girl. This girl is quite pretty. We like to have a heart-to-heart talk with people like this. And she has to be open-minded. These people all laughed. Although their words were unbearable, there was no hint of lust on their faces. Their goal seemed to be to provoke Li Wan's group. Although Li Wan wanted to suppress her anger, she was so angry that she was trembling, and her eyes were spitting fire. How dare you be so impudent at the foot of our heavy moon sect's mountain? You guys are really audacious, Luo Xing said coldly. He had already taken out a long blade. The blade's light reflected off the blade, and it emitted a cold aura. I'm so scared. One of the people blocking the way purposely crossed his arms and laughed. In a few years, the heavy moon sect might not even exist anymore. How dare you? Luo Xing and the other 2 shouted angrily. Hee, your Lord Headmaster has always been busy trying to extend your Lord Headmaster's wife's life. As long as your Lord Headmaster's wife never recovers, then your Lord Headmaster will become weaker and weaker. A person said, carrying a strange smile. Luo Xing and the other 2 froze, then revealed shocked expressions. Could it be that you guys are from the Red Flower sect? You guessed correctly, another person said. Hiss, could it be that you guys are behind the sect leader's wife's illness? Luo Xing said in shock. You guessed correctly again. The people blocking the way all laughed. Luo Xing and the other 2's expressions changed. This was a conspiracy from start to finish. The Red Flower sect was a direct competitor of the Heavy Moon sect. The 2 sides had fought for countless years over the rich Cloud Iron Mine. It produced precious divine stones, and even immortal gold could be mined from it. Therefore, this was a land that the 2 sects had fought for countless years. The number 1 expert of the Heavy Moon sect was naturally the sect leader. He was known as Immortal King Qing Ri, and his cultivation had reached the 2nd celestial layer. Moreover, Immortal King Qing Ri was the only immortal king in the Heavy Moon sect. Thus, as long as he was eliminated, it would be easy to flatten the Heavy Moon sect. The Red Flower cult finally found an opening, and that was Immortal King Qing Ri's wife. Immortal King Qing Ri loved her to the bone. Immortal King Qing Ri had to constantly use his own strength to prolong her life. As long as she didn't get better, Immortal King Qing Ri's battle prowess would be limited. Sooner or later his vitality would be greatly damaged. In this way, if the Red Flower cult launched a large-scale attack, the Double Moon cult might collapse overnight. Being able to cultivate to the ascending origin tier, Luo Xing and the others naturally could not be idiots. They immediately guessed the reason behind this, and their bodies involuntarily became covered in cold sweat. This was a scheme, an open scheme. Because even if Immortal King Green Sun knew about it, would he stop? No wonder these people wanted to stop them. Of course, they wouldn't allow the headmaster's wife to be cured. You guys are too despicable, Luo Xing and the others reprimanded. Hee, who asked your Lord Headmaster to be such an affectionate person? The people blocking the way all laughed loudly. They had long since expected this, and thus had secretly arranged a great many elites at the foot of the mountain to ambush disciples like Luo Xing kill. Luo Xing said darkly. Ji Xueming nodded. Junior sister Li, senior brother Luo, and I will hold these people back later. You break through with all your might and ascend the mountain. As long as Master receives the news, he will definitely descend the mountain to save us. If they called for help here, the distance was too far, and they couldn't possibly call for reinforcements. Otherwise, the other party wouldn't have intercepted them here. Li Wan looked hesitant, but still nodded. Two senior brothers, take care of yourselves. Charge! Luo Xing roared. Li Wan immediately charged out, but a flash of sword light directly pierced into the back of Li Wan's head. No one had expected this scene, and Li Wan had even more so not expected that there would be an attack coming from behind. She was completely focused on breaking through the encirclement, and was completely unguarded. Instantly, she was struck head-on. She collapsed, and blood flowed all over the ground. Who had done it? Everyone looked towards Ji Xueming, only to see him suddenly reveal a strange smile that sent chills down people's spines. Ji Xueming, you're crazy! Luo Xing roared angrily. This sword had been unleashed by Ji Xueming. I'm crazy! Ji Xueming laughed loudly. He suddenly made an extremely strange hand gesture. When the people from the Red Flower sect saw this, they couldn't help but be shocked. They still hadn't recovered from the scene of their fellow sect members killing each other. When they saw Ji Xueming's hand gesture, they were even more shocked. They hurriedly knelt down. Greetings, young sect leader. What? Luo Xing's body went cold. This fellow disciple was actually from the Red Flower sect. Ji Xueming smiled. Before I joined the Double Moon sect, I was already the young sect leader of the Red Flower sect. It's just that Master never brought me back to the sect, so no one knows about this. Luo Xing's gaze shifted, and he thought of another possibility. He couldn't help but become even angrier. Master's wife was poisoned by you? He used a tone of certainty because this matter had always been strange. Their master's wife usually didn't leave the mountain, so how could she have been poisoned? So, if it was done by one of their own, then it was understandable. Ji Xueming smiled slightly. That's right, I did it. Luo Xing trembled. The Red Flower sect was too scheming, because Ji Xueming had joined the sect 30 million years ago. In other words, this plot had been laid out more than 30 million years ago. When Ji Xueming finally entered the sect and won the complete trust of immortal King Blue Sun, the plan was finally revealed. It was too scary, too scary. So, strictly speaking, I'm not a traitor, am I right? Ji Xueming said calmly. Right now, it was 10 against 1. Right, there was still Ling Han, but he was just in the dark light realm, so he could completely ignore him. He was confident that he would win. As long as he got rid of Luo Xing, he could naturally swagger back to the Double Moon sect. As for Luo Xing and Li Wan's deaths, he would find an excuse to cover it up. Luo Xing was in despair. Ji Xueming would reveal his true identity, so he was naturally confident that he could get rid of him and ensure that his secret would not be exposed. He was definitely going to die. With Ji Xueming, the traitor in the Heavy Moon sect, it was only a matter of time before he destroyed the sect. Haha. Luo Xing laughed bitterly as tears of blood flowed from his eyes. He brandished his long blade, his battle intent soaring. I will fight to the death. Who dares to die? Even if I die, someone will accompany me in death. Ji Xueming shook his head. Senior brother Luo, you seem to be a little stupid. Don't you know my personality? Since I've made my move, I will not give you any room to struggle. Luo Xing's expression changed, and he hurriedly checked himself. He couldn't help but be furious. You actually poisoned me. Haha, being able to finish off the enemy without fighting is the best strategy. Ji Xueming laughed and said, since we were once from the same sect, let me send you on your final journey. Just as he was about to step forward, his body couldn't help but tremble. He revealed a shocked expression because Li Wan, who should have been dead, suddenly stood up. To hell with it, you're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.